For 5 years, we've waited for this episode of Allcraft for 5 years. And if you told me 5 years ago that we would be having Bellular on and we wouldn't only be talking about World of Warcraft, but we would also be talking about Final Fantasy XIV, well, I would say the chances of that are about as high as me going bald. But hey, look, time happens and things change. And I could not be more excited to talk to Bellular about everything that's going on. This is one of the best times to finally have this episode because, Bell, it's pretty obvious that the world of MMORPGs is going to be changed forever with all of the new games that are coming out and everything that we see players doing.
Yeah, I waited so long, it's now a Final Fantasy stream.
Yes.
Or maybe that was the Gigabrain plan all along.
Yeah, we originally wanted you to come on back whenever this was a WoW stream, back like years ago, It was a long time ago.
Oh, man. It's like such a watershed moment. Like, just, man, like waking up and seeing like PC Gamer, Polygon, and Kotaku are doing their shit and just seeing like, wait, what? 4chan's agreeing with Polygon? What is this clown universe?
Yeah, what universe is this? Exactly. Yeah, it's a little bit crazy. Have you seen the Google Trends, by the way, of the Final Fantasy stuff versus World of Warcraft?
Oh yeah, Yoshida's he's been sneaking up.
Oh my god!
I think they've taken us, right?
We have been taken. We have been taken. And it's incredible to imagine that, honestly, because like WoW has been the dominant MMO ever since 2000, ever since the day basically it came out. It's been the dominant MMO, and that's really only changed. And it's really kind of hard to say whether it's changed or not because like the numbers are all very unknown. But there's a lot more enthusiasm for Final Fantasy. I think that everybody can agree with that.
Yeah, Blizz have lost the narrative. Like it's as simple as that. And it's so weird because like traditionally you do think of like the big Japanese companies and like their efforts in Western communications and PR, yep. And typically speaking, they have not been as like hip to it or whatever.
Absolutely.
So it's so fucking funny seeing like the company that did GaaS, like games as a service first, like doing live services, managing to lose their own like they've lost the home field, right? And it's so fucking sad. Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different places, even with what was just said, there's so many different places to start. But I think one of the best places for us to start our trek right now, that's going to be this episode, is to dive in with something that you said, Bell, in one of your recent videos. I believe it was in the video. I believe it was in the video that was titled No King Rules Forever. I believe that was what it was called. I'm not 100% sure, but the idea that you had was playing Final Fantasy right now, besides PvP, because PvP is not there, but the game itself feels like a complete game. And when you play Modern WoW, you do not get that same feeling. When you were talking about that idea, what really were you looking at in Final Fantasy? What do you think makes it feel like a more complete game than 9.1?
So, well, if you're going to go for 9.1 specifically, I think it is about seeing the hand of the designer, where it is just quite transparent in World of Warcraft. So, like, that's one thing. System design can be quite blunt in WoW and overtly gamey in a way that kind of pulls you out of the world. And like, it's not to say that FF is perfect, and I'm not even in enough of a position of authority to perfectly talk on the issue. It's just that thing when you fully look over it and you play it. When I say it feels like a more complete game, I think it's quantity of content they perhaps don't have as down as they would like. Like I'm pretty sure Yoshi P has talked about like kind of wishing there was a WoW-sized budget in his hands.
Yeah.
But the thing with WoW is like it just feels fragmentary. Like if you're a PvPer, I mean, God help you, right? Like the thing that I'm interested in when it comes to PvP, yeah, it's like I want some new BGs.
You hope that like every expansion you get one thing. It's like, please give me one thing this expansion. It's awful.
Well, Bell, literally in your video, you're like, hey, look, obviously, if you sub right now, you're not going to be able to play everything in the sub because it's time gated. But if you wait a little while to sub, maybe you'll get a month out of all the content that's going to be there. And then I watch Asmon stream, and I'm playing Final Fantasy and you're playing Final Fantasy, and Asmon's doing completely different things than I'm doing when I play Final Fantasy. Like, he's wiping, and I'm learning about the story, you know? And
Yes.
when I talk to you, you're doing completely different things as well. And I think that that's where a lot of that completeness comes from. And I'm curious, Bell, if you feel like one of the reasons that happens is because Final Fantasy does such a good job at actually making the old content still feel very valuable and feel like it is legitimate content, not something that you're just kind of like looking through rose-tinted goggles trying to make a new rule set to make it feel like it's actually a challenge.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that roulettes that involve scaling down should be a weekend-only event and barely useful to anybody. It's that thing, like my first dungeon I was doing, you know, I called out to the FC and bam, a whole bunch of people came in. It just made sense, right? So, yeah, like time walking is a whole kettle of fish that absolutely it does my head in because there is so much potential. Like, if they just did a mythic time walking, you know, so that there was like a level of difficulty was there.
Yeah, they have to tune it differently.
Yeah, so they could fix up the tuning shit. Like, I would hope so easily enough. And I mean, man, just think about the rewards. Like, it's pretty damn obvious what they could do there. And then if you really wanted to go into that, you could build it around more content in the Caverns of Time, which would appeal like to a bunch of the historical players. I mean, come on, we all saw that at the back of the TBC box and kind of, you know, got a little gamer hard on, like, oh, fucking hell, the Caverns of Time, that's the coolest shit ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just that thing. Like in FF, they have invested in like the systems and stuff to just to make that all work, such that just that ability to play with your friends is so much more there.
I think
it seems to be so much more open and flexible. And then in WoW, it's like their equivalent of, you know, you mentioned that, like their equivalent of that is just time walking weekend. They get to a bit of normal mode, like normal raid gear. I'm like, man, is that it? Why does it feel like Blizzard is cash strapped? What's going on?
That's one thing I always wonder about too. Yeah, it's like they've only got they've got a small budget. It's a multi-dollar company, and you know they don't have as much resources as everybody else, and so you know it takes them 9 months to do something that these other development studios can do very quickly, right? And I understand the scope of WoW is so big, but I think Blizzard's engineered these problems for themselves. So whenever they want to make a change in the game, they've got to balance it across like a dozen different verticals. You've got PvP, PvE, conduits, covenants, talents, and like all of these other things. And it's like, of course it takes them forever to do anything, because how could anybody ever possibly test all of that? And then whenever the testing actually gets done and it comes out, it's not ready, because how could it ever possibly be ready? It's crazy. It's like they've created the problem themselves.
It's something that happens on so many levels, because it's like, well, I don't know much about the FF14 engine. I know it has issues and it's very much not perfect, but it seems like there is something going on with production issues at Blizzard. Like, I don't know what challenges they face there, but certainly if you're using a not off the shelf engine, then when people are onboarded to that team, it's going to be a bit harder to onboard them. Maybe you're going to, you know, as an example, like, well, in terms of like your staff recruitment and stuff, you're going to be prioritizing people with in-engine experience because they can get, they can get up to speed a bit quicker. I wonder, like, does that end up prioritizing, you know, sort of hiring from within the company? Like, I don't know exactly what's going on, but there's some stuff to be concerned about there. On the systems, it's like, like Covenants, basically an impossible design goal. Like they kept on saying with Covenants, like, oh, you know, if there's a specific issue with a Covenant or something like that, we'll balance it later. And it's like, no, you won't. We know you really won't. Yeah, like I'm a hunter, right? We just got 10%, basically 10% buffs this reset. Now, hunters, from what I understand, are doing really good in PvP already. So now it's like, okay, we're balanced up a bit more in PvE. Has that thrown off PvP? And then the layers and layers and layers of systems that it's like you look at a domination shard and you're like, dude, what does this do? How's this fun? How's this interactive? What is this just a more complex way to to give me the same amount of power that I get every single tier? In which case, why are we designing? Oh, what was it called? Rat Escape? You know that like board game you'd play? Like as a kid?
What was it called?
Mousetrap.
Mousetrap. Yeah.
Mousetrap.
It's like, why is every new like system and thing like a version of Mousetrap that sits on top of the other versions of Mousetrap that they've done? It's like, it's so complex. I don't get it. Like,
it reminds me.
The thing is people are mentioning PoE in the chat, and you know the thing that I'll say about PoE having these more and more complex systems building on top of each other is the game actually has a vision. The thing that I feel like with WoW that is so absurd is it's so, even without knowing what's actually going on behind the veil, you know, we can't really pull back that curtain and see what the wizard's up to, but it seems like he's smoking meth, and it seems like there are two very different visions going on at Blizzard. The idea is, hey, let's spike engagement as much as we can around expansions. That's where we make our money. Then we shove a 6-month cool mount down their throat to boost the numbers as much as we can, and we just don't give them any content ever. Ha 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 ha, look at my helicopter. But the thing is it seems like they would be able to spike that engagement around patches so much more if there was actually like this clear idea of something to get the players back, whether it's tier sets. I mean, that used to be the thing that would get me back. I would see a cool looking tier set and I'd be like, I need to have it. I'm going to come back. But now they're throwing in these weird systems like Shards of Domination.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, it's like, you know, the engineers at Twitter, and it's like every 6 months we got to have to deal with a new layout of Twitter. Yeah. It's like they have to have a reason for Twitter to continue to have them employed. And so they just create a new problem every 6 months for them to solve. And it feels kind of that way with WoW, where it's like, okay, it's a new tier. Well, the systems designers need a reason for Blizzard not to fire them. So we have this new chains of domination system or shards of domination system that most people don't understand how it works. It seems completely unnecessary, but here it is anyway. And that's kind of the way that it feels like. It feels like they're adding these things into the game for really no reason. And I think that whenever they've moved to simplicity, I think one of the positive things about Shadowlands is the fact that they made gearing and PvP much more simple. And oftentimes, I think Blizzard's efforts towards simplicity's sake and not having the unnecessary complexities has actually been met with a lot of positivity. And so it's weird that they just continue trying to add in more systems. But what it seems like to me is that it's kind of like an element of like not understanding the way that people think, because they just want to make it more complex to give people more content, and they don't have the intuition to understand that sometimes less is more.
I think intuition's a big thing. Like it's hard to speculate as to like why it goes down like this. A bit of me though does think that you got a problem, right? And you throw a systems designer at it. It's like, you know, a hammer is going to see a nail.
Yes.
That it's just the way that, you know, they'll operate. Really, and I think I think it's likely some sort of institutional thing. Like I genuinely don't think they go, okay, we won't give them tier sets. We'll give them shards of domination and we'll deposit them slowly and slowly and slowly and give you little bits of gear here and there just to string the players along. Like, I don't think that's why they do it.
You know what I think
that it actually is them genuinely trying, but not getting it.
I agree with you, but I would go a step further. I think you have a company where people are scared and they're doing anything that they can to try to keep their job security. So when you have a system, you sit around in a room, everybody's in a circle, everybody's voting, everybody votes for everybody's idea, and then tries to get the rewards attached to their system to boost the player numbers so they look like a good systems designer. And the thing that I want to say to all of those employees who are so desperate for that job security, if you want to feel security, you should download NordVPN, because that is the greatest feeling of security that you will ever feel. I do not care if you are a Blizzard designer or if you are just watching the show right now, you can go download NordVPN. The mods can spam the link in the chat, and when you go there, you can either use code Allcraft or code Bellular. Just be sure to support the people on this show. And yeah, I really think that's what the Blizzard designers are going through right now.
I wish it was just that easy. I wish it was just as easy as downloading NordVPN and using code Bellular or code Allcraft, because that is so easy to do. And if it was that easy, World of Warcraft would have been fixed years ago.
Yeah, and by being able to choose from their 4,000 plus servers anywhere in the world. And of course, they're a Panama registered company, so their country can't get them to steal their game design. It's the obvious choice.
Who would want to steal that game design right now?
Yeah, I wonder about that. I really do. I mean, we see all these new games. We see all these new games coming out. There's Ashes of Creation coming out, and there's New World coming out. There's Final Fantasy that's trying to not really even reinvent itself, but just continuously, put out the same content. And even you see people playing old school RuneScape too. And it does seem like there's much more of there's many more options, because I think for many years, WoW was like, if you wanted to play an MMO, you were pretty much stuck playing WoW or whatever the flavor of the month pump and dump game was going to be. Whether it was going to be Aeon, Terra, whatever, like all these games were pretty much dog shit, Arcade, and then it was over. And I think now that you actually do have some competitors with staying power, it's actually shown how much people don't want to deal with a lot of the, I think it was like Bellular, what you said, with you can see the hand, right? You can see, the guy behind the Wizard of Oz. You can see the man behind the machine, and after that, you can't see the machine in the same way anymore. And you look at these systems, and it's very clear. I think the most egregious example of this was the corruption vendor on the rotation. How is it that the rotation is a little bit more than a month?
Did we just get smarter?
Are you fucking kidding me?
Did we just get smarter? Because the question I have, very much playing WoW back in the day, it felt like the first time you go to Disney World, right? You're like, holy crap, this place is actually magic. This is real. Wow, look at Tinkerbell, she's flying. And then you come back, you're a little bit older, and you can see all the strings. You can just see all the scaffolding. You understand how the world works better. Did we get smarter, or did they get worse, or do you think it's a combination of the two?
Both. The game is smaller. It's like you used to go in there, you're in Main Street, USA, and you're like, oh shit, look at all of these realms I can go to, and all the little bits of Disney. But now, I know this is probably a controversial thing, what I do think is there's just a big conveyor belt on Main Street, USA, which I think is it Magic Kingdom? Whatever, the first bit of Disney. And
Main Street, USA,
a lot of that other stuff that you do between your raid logging is not really supported as much. Like reputations. Since Warlords of Draenor,
World Quest counters?
Yeah, what? Dude, I lose my fucking marbles every time World Quest comes up, or World Quest come up. Because, I mean, the way that they're done, they're deposited by an algorithm, or just some shit like that. They don't really relate to each other. And that means that, when you're playing a game, it's super fucking important. And this is what gets all the PoE people and all of that shit. You get into a state of flow. And the problem with World Quests is it's weird because the random nature, you would think that would make them, more interesting and more varied. They're random distribution, but the same content. So you don't really get as much of a mastery pattern over them. Which is kind of one thing. They're not that thematic. Not super thematic, I think. And, patch 5.1, right? You do your dailies, you hit a new reputation threshold, you get a story quest. You've pushed you're going on more of a journey with that faction. The Wild Hunt? I mean, what's going on with the Wild Hunt? I get to a new reputation that it's less of an RPG. And I think what has basically happened.
You get your box. You
get a Paragon box.
Yeah, there can be a mountain.
Happy Fun box.
Oh boy,
full of loot. Ooh, but that's the thing. Even me saying full of loot, it reminds me of I think it was the Ian Preach interview when they were talking about the Mage Tower, right? Yeah, and they were basically saying that we had all these cool rewards and we needed a way to give them to the player, so we made the Mage Tower. And if you go back to it, it's the most ass backwards way to make a game. I mean, if you want to completely just create the the over justification effects and stuff like that, design rewards first. Obviously, people have been wanting a Mage Tower for ages, so the reward bit doesn't matter. Figure that out later. Focus on the content that people want. But as for the reps, they basically used to feel like their own distinct little bits of content. Now, not all of them were great, sure, whatever, but they were their own distinct little things interspersed, across a patch, such that it's patch 5.3. You're doing a bit of, some stuff in the Barrens. It's not the most hype ever, but hey, Order of the Cloud Serpent, there's 20 days of gameplay in that. So off you go and you do that. And it feels like a separate side activity. And it's a separate side activity that will feel different to going back and doing, another rep. Whereas now they're entirely homogenized into one system and they all feel the same. I mean, World Quest 2 at BlizzCon, they're a bit longer now.
Well, the 2.0 is the multiplier on the time it takes. That's what it is. And so what they did, like, I loved Legion World Quest straight up. Like, you could go in there, it was like kill 10 pirates. I said, okay, I can do that. I round up 10 pirates, I press my one ability, and based off of the hours and hours and hours that I spent wiping on Mythic Botanist at 1 a.m, I was able to one-shot the entire thing, and I do the entire world quest in one pull. I'm done, and I move on to the next one, and that felt good. And now it's like all this, like, there's like a 3-phase world quest to get 2 anima globes. Who the fuck wants to do that?
Do you want to play Flappy Bird in the year of our Lord 2021?
Oh my god!
To be honest with you, I think that's one of the better ones. That's one of the ones that I like. Well, it's not. It would be if it worked properly. Okay, you can go into the spike. Like, your knee can hit the spike, and you still don't lose. And then other times, the tip of your wing hits the top, and you're dead. It's crazy, man. Yeah, I don't know what to do about that, man.
It's just, like, it's so crazy.
It's awful.
So Bellular and I were talking about this a whole bunch before we even went live. And it was just like the idea of Blizzard used to be polish, right? Like, that was what you expected when you walked into a Blizzard game. Do we feel like the polish has really been lost? And if so, why? I don't want to dive too deep into it, but we could talk about all the conspiracy theories that have been floating around on the internet over the past couple of weeks about what's really going on behind the scenes. Like, the only thing that I'm sure about from those conspiracy theories with, like, Blizzard leaks and what Blizzard employees think, the only thing that I'm actually sure about is the fact that Asmongold is an asshole. That's the only one I'm sure about. Everything else, it could all be bullshit. We have to take it with a grain of salt. But what do we think is going on that's causing these feelings of polish to not really be there anymore?
I think that it's just this simple. I think they don't know how to make a game that feels rewarding. It is literally that simple. Because how many times have they gone up? I think Ian has gone up and tried to explain to us why we should be having fun. That should never happen. It's like they're explaining, like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal because it'll work out in averages. Like, they're using statistics to justify the way that people feel, or to invalidate the way that people feel. And that's just not the way you design a game.
You know the one thing that Ian's always been good at, though?
If that was the way you designed a game, none of the gambling websites would ever work.
Ian's always been a good encounter designer, though. And I do feel like encounter design is the one thing that doesn't completely... Like, art and encounter design tend to stay pretty decent in WoW.
They're amazing.
Yeah, I have to wonder if that's because they're, like, quite production friendly. And, like, there's definitely going to be plenty of, unknown unknowns as you're, like, doing encounters, but they have that shit down. For the lack of polish, I think it's because, well, what happens when you make something that's hard to polish? It's going to be harder to polish. Like, it's one of, like, maybe it feels like a little bit close to the bone for me. Like, we burnt through too much money on basically an overly ambitious systems-driven game that required a bunch of systems to be right for the overall loop to make sense. We did a whole bunch of shit ass backwards, and it was that thing. The design that we went for was fundamentally way harder to get right than the other thing that we're doing now. And I think when you look at World of Warcraft, you see a whole bunch of that. They just go for these ambitious... I call them Schlieffen plans for, like, the history nerds out there. There's this dude, like... whatever, anyway. It was this, like, plan, right? And it was like, hey, this is the most banging plan. We do this plan right, it's going to be a total winner. But it was a plan for victory. You don't make a plan for victory, right? Yeah. So, the likes of the Covenant system, if it's perfectly balanced, there's 0 player power concerns, no player friction, everyone gets an incredible everything, then sure, it's great.
I definitely...
What's the chance of that happening?
I see the Schlieffen plan for sure. I've been Schlieffen while alone. Get it?
Oh, that's good, dude.
Got it.
That's good. Okay, good job, Rich. I'm proud of you. That's really great.
Thank you.
Look, I agree with that. I think that, oftentimes it's designed in a way that players will not abuse it. And, like, Corruptions is another example, right? How they had to nerf, like, Twilight Devastation in Arena by, like, this massive amount. was like 50% on week 1. Like, how did you not expect that to happen? And there's just so many cases where it seems like testing and planning for the game has just like really not happened. And whenever that happens so often, and then you have like these massive overreactions where they take something like Echoing Void or whatever it was, and they just nerf it by half and they make it completely garbage. Those kinds of things I think are really frustrating for players because people are trying to figure these things out, and then they spend tons of gold on them, and then they get changed completely because Blizzard decided not to test them properly beforehand. And anybody could have seen these things happening because they became evident on the first day of the patch. And I think these same things happen with Covenants too. Whenever you see Blizzard talking about, oh, well, players are going to pick the one that they want to play with, you know, based off of like lore or whatever. And the reality is the breakdowns are, it's like 90% of people, or 95% of people don't pick one Covenant. Like there's one Covenant that like only 5 or 3% of people pick for some classes and specs. That's crazy.
Yeah, but people came back in the past, right? Shadowlands, best-selling PC game of all time. For a few days until whatever that other game was. But I think it is a sort of thing where it's the incumbent has got their advantage, but also the blindness that comes with that. And I think that they've been more okay. Maybe it's just that their tolerance for what is shippable has maybe decreased a bit. But I think this is the big but. Their tolerance for that has decreased, but also their focus on gameplay-oriented content, where those things have got to be right early, has increased. So, you know, if we think about, like, let's just say how I played the game in Mists of Pandaria, or maybe in Wrath of the Lich King, or something like that. If something was busted as fuck, like, it didn't really matter to me, because there was a bunch of other stuff to do. It was, like, early enough on in the game's life that, you know, getting a mount was still an exciting thing. And, you know, a goal to work towards. So as that stuff has melted away and the 3 pillars of Mythic Plus, Raid, and PvP have taken over, well, if more of your game's relying on those pillars, and those pillars require that level of polish and balance, and then you start to make a game that is fundamentally harder to polish and balance because you've created multiplicative complexity, then yeah, you've just kind of built your own prison. And I have a worry that they have an institutional focus on those kind of game systems, perhaps learning the wrong lessons from Legion or something like that, to the point where they can't see the forest for the trees.
I mean,
essentially,
I think everything that you said, it rings true with everybody in chat. I do want to bring up something, though, where you almost can't blame them. I'm going to sound like Hassan here, but the system kind of seems like it's the problem, because these guys are making more money on just shipping expansions, locking people into their 6-month their 6-month subscriptions and selling them out than they probably have been before. Yeah. Like Shadowlands did great. The expansion is terrible. It's not fun to play.
To be fair, no, I think Shadowlands, honestly, if they had released 9.1 when 9.1 should have been released, I think half of the complaints and frustration about the game would be gone.
But they're not incentivized to. They're incentivized to do it every 6 months, right?
That's very true. And that's why as soon as they bring out a patch, that's whenever they bring out that cool new looking mount that's like this fucking Articuno thing. And meanwhile, the game gets like 4 different versions of the same mount, which admittedly does look cool, but it's still frustrating whenever you can see obviously so much more effort went into the store mounts.
That's why I've got it. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got to bring it back to our very first stream ever, which was during Warlords of Draenor, right? That 3-way discussion we had with Az.
Yeah.
So you could make a reputation like the Order of for some reason I talk about mount reps, but whatever. You could make a reputation around the Dracorium, around the Dracorium in Shadow Moon Valley, right?
Yeah,
and you know your players could get 25 days of reasons to log into the game and do things, which Warlords of Draenor sorely needed.
Yes.
You could do that, or in the 5.4 content drought, you could add the Fey Dragon to the in-game store and make a lot more money. And I'm not necessarily saying that they choose not to develop in-game content around some rewards like mounts so that they can put them in the store. But I mean, you look at those incentives. Like the thing that would have been the most healthy for the game is the Dracorium turns into a reputation. You get the Fey Dragon mount in game. That obviously didn't happen. Look at the Silverian Dreamer.
And I think that whenever you get a point where the game developer is rationalizing game design decisions and things like that by business and saying like, well, this is better for business, so the game is worse. Players don't give a shit about their business. It doesn't matter. Players want to have fun. They want to enjoy the game.
Yeah,
look,
like
I don't think that it's necessarily the game designers making those decisions though, because when you actually look at what's happening,
You might be right.
This model is the exact same. Like, because look, I think the game designers are bad. I don't think that they're very smart in the current, like with what's going on right now. I don't think that they're masterminds trying to extend player numbers. I think that they're making mistakes for other reasons. So I don't want to kind of give almost credit to them for the mistakes being bad, being like an evil super genius plan. I think when you look at the model that Blizzard's trying to do right now, I look at that model and it's literally Call of Duty. Call of Duty sells its title every year. You have that clock. And then now I think they try to come out with battle passes as well. It's not a new model. And I've always, in the past, I felt like a lot of conversations like this were very much tinfoil hat. But it just seems very obvious, especially with the 6-month rotation that they put on, the extensions that they put on in corruption, so you wouldn't be able to do it in time. It seems very clear that they're just trying to boost those numbers and sell copies. So I think the issues in game design, that lies in the camp of the game designers. Whether you think that they're incredible at their job or you don't think they're doing a good job right now, I think that a lot of the financial models, I think it's coming from somewhere else. And that pressure might be affecting game design slightly, but I think it's two different decisions being made.
Yeah, on the financial stuff, it's like what gets measured gets managed. And if you have a bunch of people who are working on that stuff and they're producing incredible returns by coming up with things like the 6-month mount, yeah, that's going to be great. You're going to put more resources into that. For the game design thing, it's like, I totally see how, you know, you're a game designer, you're looking at the corruption stuff, and you know that certain things are best for certain situations. You are going to think to yourself, okay, well, if we just give the players all this shit at once, they're going to go straight for the thing they like the most, and then they will disengage with the system. And then the system won't matter anymore, and they won't give a shit about the currency that they're getting. Like, I can totally see how, you know, you could totally miss the point and rationalize it that way. And I mean, that's, I think, what you mean when you say, you know, game designer problem or a player problem. Like, that's a philosophical designer problem. And it's that sort of thing where you can have a very watertight, internally, logically consistent design philosophy. But like, yeah, it's like it might not be fun. You know, you could have a perfectly constructed car or something, makes complete sense, but it's not fun to drive.
Yeah, there's a certain point of like, I think you're right. It's basically they're solving problems that game designers see with the game and that players don't see with the game. And I think, like, for example, I watched like there was some like seminar or something like that whenever a guy was talking about the problem that they have with Wrath of the Lich King, where there was a bunch of different currencies in the game, and this was like this big issue that they needed to solve. This was really not an issue to players. I think most players didn't really care about this. This was something that game designers identified and thought that it was a problem because they're looking at it through the lens of being game designers rather than being players. And I think that's really where a lot of the things happen, is that game designers think this is a good idea because they're not actively interfacing with the content. They're not actively playing these games. And there are some things like that, and I will say it, I think that a lot of them don't fucking play the game. And I think that even if they do play the game, it is in a way that is so removed from what the average population does that they have no idea what the average population's pain points even are. Like, so they don't even know.
When I went to game design school, they teach you two things very early on. The first thing that they tell you is they go, you're making a terrible mistake. Please do anything else. Then the second thing that they teach you is they go, hey, when you look at the player, they're an agent of chaos. You do not know what they are going to do. Make a system that allows for emergent gameplay. Like, that is what you're supposed to do. And with WoW, I always feel like recently, not always, but it always feels like the developers act like they know exactly how the player is going to play the game. And the game is designed with that in mind. This fake player that doesn't actually exist. And they're assuming what our moment-to-moment decisions are going to be. Where when you look at Final Fantasy, and this is one of the reasons that I've been so positive about Final Fantasy, there is a world there, there's a bunch of shit to do, and if you play Triple Triad all day, that's fine. If you go and you do the raids, if you do it with min eye level, if you do it synced, if you do it with Echo, no matter what, you're gonna feel like you accomplished something. If you just sit there and play the story by yourself, it's a fulfilling experience. With WoW, if you go off the rails, it feels like you just jumped off of a roller coaster and you are free falling.
It's not designed for that kind of stuff, right? Like WoW isn't designed for the same type of gameplay that, like, let's say I do. Like, I'll give you an example, okay? In Bellular, I know that you probably do not subject yourself to the same level of degeneracy of transmog farming that I do. But let me explain to you the way that Shadowlands rares drop transmog items. So the way that these Shadowlands rares drop transmog items is that those transmog items are only available on the loot table if you are killing that rare on the class that could obtain that item naturally and have it be an upgrade for that character that they are playing on. Knowing full well that players play the game for transmog, people love transmog, and what do you have to do? You have to go over, and if I want to get all of the different scythes from Ardenweald, I have to go over on a special caster character and kill them on that caster character, and this is the exact same fucking system that it was, I believe, in the 8.3 rares as well. So if I wanted to go and farm out the dagger from the Oldham rares, I would have to go and do it on either a rogue or a caster that could equip daggers. And this is insane. Like, why is this even happening? And I recently got done with, do you guys remember the chests back in Legion in like the different Argus zones?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so in each chest, there is a possibility that it can drop a purple item that is a transmog set, and the entire thing is just a reskin of the Wards Draenor Shatari Skyguard reputation. And so I got all three of those sets, and it took me probably collectively 100 hours. Some of these things that you have to do, some of the goals that Blizzard has for players to work towards in the game are just so monumentally ridiculous that it's just not even fun to progress in them, because even whenever you complete it, you feel like an idiot because you know you just wasted 100 hours.
Yeah, it's because it's not content. Like, I would contend that that's not content. It's like, I think about Korthia, some of the stuff people do with rares, and in my head, Korthia is like a bunch of seasoning but no meat. In that, I feel like there should be a lot, a lot more there. If you want to get that stuff from content, I mean, you could develop a wrap around it. You could develop some sort of various things they've done in the past. Of course, they could do new things as well. There is one thing that interested me, though, because that GDC, I think it was GDC, and it was the talk about the over-justification effect.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that for mounts?
In what way?
Well, I mean, they've kept on rewarding you with mounts for so many years now. Are you still excited about getting new mounts?
I mean, like, it depends on the mount. But like overall, no, not as much as I used to be, right? I mean, like getting your first like 50 or 100 mounts is way a bigger deal than getting your 500th mount. And this is a problem. Like I genuinely think it's a problem with the game in general, because in WoW's reward structure, there's just so much bloat. Like whenever you only had Ashes of Alar was fucking awesome. But now whenever you have Invincible, the Pureblood Firehawk, and 8 different storm mounts that look better, and then there's also the purple version from the Cataclysm Guild vendor, and there's 15 other versions of the mount too that look way cooler, your Ashes of Alar is comparatively not as special because you're not as unique anymore. And I do think that there's a point of diminishing returns and a point where people don't feel as special and they don't stand out as much because everybody stands out and everybody is special because there are so many things that are super easily available. Now, I would love if Blizzard, I know that this is like one positive thing that they've done, is that they've added these, like these back pieces instead of cloaks. And like, that's really cool because that's a brand new thing. But there are some problems with that, as many of the back pieces are not unique or special. There's just 4 different versions of them, and one of them you get from a rare. The other one you get from completing Mythic plus 20 or something like that. I mean, I don't think that's what it is, but it's like something similar. And like the difficulty level of obtaining the different skins is widely varied to the point where it doesn't feel like an accomplishment whenever you get one of these, or you see one that has the cool skin or the cool color, because you see the same other colors all the time. And I would have loved to see Blizzard with BFA. This is like my dream, was that if BFA had done some sort of like ship expansion where you could actually go out on an island expedition and you could augment your ship. You could change your ship. Or what if they had a mount? You know, like in The Witcher, whenever you could ride around with like the Griffin head or something like that. What if that was a Nixia's head? And you could like have these like base mounts, like a base horse or a base wolf. And you could augment these mounts based off of different achievements or accomplishments you have. Like that would be so cool. And they don't really innovate or change the rewards. They just add more and more and more of them, because you're right. There is a diminishing return because everybody already has their favorite mount. Everybody already has their favorite pet, their favorite title, etc. And there's so many in the game that the ones that exist are very few and far between that are special, because many people don't even know what they are.
I agree with everything that you said. I agree 100% with everything that you said. But I think another thing that's missing beyond the saturation, which is really evident for me after playing Final Fantasy, there isn't a good way to display your rewards anymore either. The saturation is still a problem, right? Even if there was a way to display it, saturation would still be a problem. But with the way that World of Warcraft feels right now, there aren't as many shared spaces where, you know, you're not looking at the same mailboxes where you see somebody on the Ashes of Alar like you used to. Like, people aren't congregated in local areas. And I actually used to be against player housing before I played Final Fantasy and before I played some other games with player housing, because I was like, wait, this is just going to take players further away from each other. Like old school Stormwind, old school Ironforge. That was really what I looked at as peak shared space, where you could see people showing off not only their mounts, but also their gear. And you're like, that guy right there, if he was in front of me right now, I'd suck his dick, and then I would ask him how the fuck he did that, and I'd let him coach me, you know? And now you don't really have that well. And I think that shared space and having good displayability on rewards is really important. And in Final Fantasy, you know, you walk into a city and there are a bunch of people dancing and they got their T weapons on. And I'm like, that guy right there is good at the game. That is cool. Sorry, they're usually a Vieira. So I say that girl right there is good at the game.
That guy.
That girl right there. If she got bunny ears, if they're bunny ears, it's a girl.
Okay. Sure.
Don't shatter this for him.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
I love this game. I don't know why so many more girls play Final Fantasy than WoW. Like, in WoW, you know, a lot of guys play WoW, but Final Fantasy, majority of the player base is female.
Because you can play way hotter characters, man. Like, they're so hot.
So
like,
you think that makes girls want to play the game more?
Yeah, of course. Like, look at what do guys want to play? They want to play a guy that looks like he's ready to have a bare knuckle boxing match with a silverback gorilla. Okay, yeah. They don't want to play some, you know, balding middle-aged man with a beer belly. Who wants to do that? No, they want to play somebody that looks awesome, man.
They want to play like a short, cute badass with like a big weapon. They want to be lollapilled.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself. But
Bell, are you part of the potato gang?
Ooh, I mean, I'm from Ireland.
Yeah,
our Lalafells look a bit different.
I don't know.
Girls all the way. Fuck you guys.
There you go. Absolutely, that's very, very true. I totally agree with that. But yeah, I mean, I think that like with many people, like I think example of this is the what do you call it? The solo queue. With solo queue, I think that's like a symptom and not really the disease. I think the reason why people need solo queue and the reason why people want solo queue is because there is no shared space for PvPers to interact with each other. You guys remember back in Mists of Pandaria when everybody would be sitting on the wall, people would be dueling, and they would duel each other, and then you duel a priest and he'd mind control you off the edge or some bullshit. And that's just where PvPers would congregate. And I think it's the same thing with a lot of the other zones in previous expansions, like Ironforge back in like Vanilla WoW and outside of Stormwind and like Cataclysm. And you always had this place that PvPers would go to and see each other and interact with each other. And that was their queuing system, is they would duel each other and be like, oh, this guy beat the shit out of me. I wonder if he'll play with me. And that's the way I saw tons of people back in the day. Like, you used to see all of the old, like, a lot of the legends that you see on Twitch, right? Like Mitch Jones, Athene, Swifty. You'd see them outside of Stormwind just dueling people. And that was so cool. And now you don't have that shared space anymore because of sharding. Like, I went over to Stormwind, and there's like 5 people in the city. How does that happen in an MMO? It's crazy.
I feel like sharding is... I get why they do it. I totally do. But it's dangerous, dude. Because it's like... I mean, you think about, like, imagine, say, actually, Guild Wars 2 does have a bunch of in-zone events and also loads of sharding, but and I guess then you can't even do things that are Horde versus Alliance because server pops are so screwed. So I totally empathize it with Blizzard in that one. But, like, you know, if you want Korthia to be Korthia, like, on your server, and there is no sharding, the design space there and what you can do just is so much larger, right? So that's like a large thing. And generally, it's even like the thing about the mounts, the example from earlier. Engineering is, I think, a challenge with Blizzard because it's an old engine and they have done a fucking marvelous job of keeping, you know, bits of it up to date. Like, WoW feels great to play when it's working, but you know, you want to put Anixia's head on the side of your mount. That's hard. That's actually deceptively hard to implement, especially, I mean, okay, I can think about how we could implement that fairly easily, but with a few issues in like Unity or Unreal or something, but I don't know what the WoW engine's like. Right,
the WoW
so
engine, literally, they added an extra row to the backpack, an extra row of what, four slots, and the entire game crashed for like a month straight after they did that. You can't tell me that that's not a coincidence. That is a coincidence, rather. Like, that is spaghetti code to its core. They changed the backpack, which you know has been coded into the game since the very beginning of time, and everything was fucked after that.
Yeah,
that
so
was
it's
the
like
beginning of the end.
They've got those problems, but then, I mean, see, when you're doing shit with making a new model is expensive, making a new rig is really expensive, new animation sets really fucking expensive. You then start, I mean, you guys should see how much money it costs to do is a company that I've been like doing a little bit of like working around with. I can't say too much, but they, you know, they were pricing out, like, we're going through spreadsheets and stuff. They were pricing out the cost of doing different character customizations on, I guess, a number of body plans for which, you know, you need a new version of that t-shirt, a new version of, you know, whatever. It is so fucking expensive. And then graphical fidelity keeps on going up and up and up.
Yeah.
And the problem then is, well, you feel like, oh shit, we have now set the bar. We've set the standard because the art team's fucking awesome. But oh wait, shit, it's really getting it's get more and more expensive to make things as stuff looks. I mean, goddamn, look at Tazavesh, right? So
it's incredible.
It's this like combined thing of I think have a bunch of engineering issues. And I think they have a bunch of production pipeline issues. Like, I can't say that for a fact, but it feels like that, considering that in the face of knowing they're going to be, I don't know, giving people their 700th mount soon enough, they're still trying to give people more mounts instead of diversifying them and stuff.
Man, the thing with the mounts, there's the biggest mount reward is 400. 400, you basically get that by logging into the game. Like, where is the 450? Where is the 500? Where is the 550? Where is the 600 mount achievement that nobody can even get now except for one guy in Russia who bought a bunch of Gladiator accounts 10 years ago? There's nobody else that has this but this one guy, and everybody sees this dude, and everybody is amazed. That's the kind of stuff that I would love to see in the game. I think that is so cool, like where people are able to break through. And like Blizzard doesn't have those like aspirational achievements. They're just really cool. Like, they're so lazy with it, man. Like, what if, think about this, right? What if they had the 550 mount, 600 mount achievement mount was a golden chariot pulled by winged golden horses?
Yeah, but then if I didn't have it, I would be sad. So they can't put it in the game.
They gotta put that in the store then.
Yeah, they put it in the store, and then I can just go get a job and pay for the game. I do want to. I agree with everything, Zach, that you're saying, but I want to go back to the server thing really quick, because I actually think that this is like the sad realization that I had. I've said it quite a few times. Like, I actually, you know, no fault to World of Warcraft for having an old engine, right? The game has an old engine. That's the reality of the situation. It is a 17-year-old game or whatever it is now. But the thing is, when people say, we want a World of Warcraft 2, we want an update to it, we want a World of Warcraft 2, I have always said, we don't want a World of Warcraft 2. It's going to be made by the same developers. It's going to be even worse. These devs making a World of Warcraft 2 would be terrible. What's the point of a new engine? It's just, you're going to make the same shit systems in HD. when you look at Final Fantasy, that game also has a terrible engine. I love playing Final Fantasy right now. That engine feels so bad. But if there was a new Final Fantasy 14 on a new engine, all of the systems that are being put in the game are so good that I would have faith that they would actually be able to utilize that engine. And that dissonance between how I feel about a WoW 2 and how I feel about Final Fantasy getting a new engine, I think is the biggest indicator to me that there is something terrible going on at World of Warcraft right now.
Well, they changed it. They changed the engine in Final Fantasy 14 from the original game into A Realm Reborn. And that's actually a really good point. And also, like, Bellular, I remember you said this in one of your videos. You said that WoW basically has been a WoW 2. And you said that, like, WoW
3.
1. Yeah, WoW 3, right? Count. And it was like, yeah, like vanilla WoW to Wrath was like WoW 1, Cataclysm to Warlords of Draenor was WoW 2, and Legion to now was WoW 3. And I think that's true, right? Because each of those expansions was a huge breakpoint in quality and a huge breakpoint in fidelity and just like everything in the game. It was massive. And I do think that's true, but at a certain point, I do think that WoW is to a degree held back by its engine. It must be, because why do we have so much lag in games where you have equivalent things happening and there isn't that lag? Why is it that the Ashes of Creation technical demo can run more people performing actions than a massively multi-billion-dollar company after 20 years? It's crazy.
Good systems are good systems, though. Like, look, I mean, Bell, I'm not sure if you played. Did you ever play Dream Quest? Because nope. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Okay. So a game made by Peter Whalen. It is one of the most janky looking Unity games I've ever seen. But you have all of these games which spun out of it, like Slay the Spire and a lot of these roguelike like kind of dungeon crawler deck builders. They all come from that game. Like, that is the pedigree that started the whole thing off. Peter Whalen, actually, I'm not sure if he still does, incredible game designer. I'm pretty sure that he was on the Hearthstone team. I actually think he's one of the best game designers as far as solo projects went. Incredible. Like, literally 5-head game developer. That game was made in, this is the game. Look how janky that game actually looks. Now, that game was made in Unity. It is one of the ugliest things you will ever see. I think he made it while he was at MIT working on a combinatronics degree. I can barely even say it. My brain is so smooth. But when you play that game, the game is undeniably a good game. You can still have good systems regardless of an engine. The problem right now with World of Warcraft, yes, the engine is not ideal, but the game itself, the systems itself, the rewards itself are flawed. Yeah, this is the game. This is one of my favorite games of all time, by the way. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
I promise you, if you played it, you would literally be like, "Wow, dude, this is pretty fucking good, dude."
Like they've just learned all the wrong lessons. Like, you're dope shit. You're right. Like, they've been doing the same shit again and again. We're getting a slightly different flavor of the same thing. I would love to know what their internal review of Azerite is, or something like that.
You said in your video, you were like 9.1. If you've liked WoW recently, you will like 9.1 because it's more of the same. I felt that way for a while.
Different, but it's soup, right? It all just turns into some big broth, and it's this. That's just They're doing fundamentally, I think, the same design goal. What they're basically, I think they have an idea that if they get one of these little systems right, it will be like it was with, say, maybe Titan Fortune comes out the first time in, it really goes ham in Legion. Legion's got a bunch of content. All the stuff's good. It's novel. So it all goes boom, pop. And they're like, oh shit, okay, we're going to recapture that. And then they've just continually iterated on the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. And maybe they haven't understood that Legion was a little bit of a shambles from a systems perspective. But players didn't mind too massively because, it was Legion. It was fun. Right? Like, it was fun. As people in, it had a whole bunch of content.
Garbage. Yeah, they'll forgive all kinds of garbage as long as the gameplay is good. And the Legion gameplay was fucking good.
That's it. Even the collection stuff. It feels like we're just getting lower budget attempts to recapture the Legion magic. Now, I do have a few theories there. Like, I'm fairly sure that Legion kind of entered pre-production like way early. Pre-production, I mean. Like, I'm actually quite sure that in Mists of Pandaria era, they basically were making a choice between the two things that they could have done, and a lot of Legion design ideas were there. I mean, I'm fairly... Like, even if you think about, like, Path of the Titans, there's, like, some similarities there to artifact weapons and stuff. So I feel like with Legion, they had a lot more lead time. They also sacrificed a major patch. So it didn't matter that, your Lego acquisition sucked and a bunch of issues like that. There was just a fuckload of content and a bunch of cool new shit to collect. So people were happy. And then with BFA, I think what happens is you get a bit of a changing of the guard. People leaving and stuff like that. And then some trying to recapture the magic. And then I don't know, the types of thinkers who think that Warfronts are good ideas as implemented, which is absolutely baffling. Like, I don't think there's any way you could fundamentally say that Warfronts were, it's like they were kind of, I remember like very early in the beta when you actually could lose, and they were like a little bit of fun because they were like a weird challenge in beta, but then by the time they come out, sans the heroic ones, they're just such a cakewalk that there's no gameplay, there's no mastery loop. The best you can do is try to speedrun the damn thing. Even that, I think, was a bit throttled.
We tried to lose the Warfront once. It took longer than it would take to win it. Like, we had to sit there for like 20 minutes. And if one player was out there fighting, I'm pretty sure he could have taken on the Horde all by himself, man. He could have done the whole thing all by himself. That's how ridiculous it was. And I had to like make everybody stand right there away from everything else. It was just so ridiculous. And it was so bad that whenever we actually lost, it was very clear that like the losing screen was not even really programmed. Like, it was like, it wasn't really very well designed. I think that like the edges were just like messed up because they're just like, oh, this is never going to happen anyway. Like, you can't lose this. Who cares? So we just don't need to worry about a losing screen. And it's just it's crazy. Like, I think that like the Warfront stuff, like I remember whenever Warfronts were announced and I was more excited. Yeah. I was more, it was defeat. Yeah. Like, there's no like reward or anything like that to it. It's just like, wow, okay, there it is. And I felt like they just put Warfronts was one of the things where they could have made them better. And I think that like in Blizzard's credit, they are making Torghast better. Like, I don't know if you guys have done Torghast at all in 9.1, but I genuinely think that Torghast in 9.1 is a massive step up in quality and depth and just gameplay in general from Torghast originally, and it's in its best state that it's ever been in. It's even better than the way that it was in Alpha, because in Alpha it would just get boring after 10 floors. And the reality is that's awesome. I'm so happy for that. That's great. But Warfronts, they didn't do that with at all. And they just immediately just gave up on them. They added another one, and then that was it. They never tried to fix them. They never took feedback into consideration. They just said, oh, you don't like it? Okay, never mind.
It's still Shortcast, though.
Yeah.
You're going in for the wrong reason.
I really want to hear your take on this, because I know you play a lot of roguelikes as well, right?
Fair bit.
You play some? Yeah, because I've heard you talk about them in your videos before. But how the heck do you make a roguelike system that has no variance and expect it to feel right? Like, that's my biggest problem with Torghast as well. I don't know if the change has somewhat made that feel better, but every time I went into Torghast, not only did it only feel like I was doing exactly what you just said, that I feel like I was going in there to simply get the reward and leave, but I also knew everything that was going to happen, because the powers that you were taking, the anime powers that you were taking, they pretty much always led to the same result. You weren't creating like a clear-cut path through this dungeon to get through.
Yeah, the way that... So, right, it's a very fundamental thing with World of Warcraft. One of the things that I think people like in Classic and TBC is that it is so based on... Not so based, but part of the combat model is that a lot of it is white damage. And that can make, like, you have... these times where you've got like such a small amount of abilities and things you can do in your character, but it makes it very clenchy because there's just some hits you got to take because it's white damage, right? So you're really trying to squeeze as much as you can out of a relatively small pool of abilities. Now you have this situation in Torghast where there's still a lot of white damage, right? Now that there's white damage, and then they increase the difficulty by scaling health and damage. Now, this ends up creating, I think, and this must be something that, like, credit to them, this is just like dead hard, for a problem to solve, where to do well, you need to scale up in line with the Torghast floors and the layers in terms of what you pick. And that's going to mean that you're really going to just want to pick the straight damage and health things as you're going, unless you're one of the lucky classes that can have some sort of crazy busted build that is super fun. So they have this weird little thing where... Oh, I was saying like white damage and yellow damage. So,
That's
ability damage versus like auto attacks.
It's really, honestly, it's a systematic issue in the game.
So it's this weird thing where it's quite hard to challenge a player in World of Warcraft with how their combat model works. So doing a roguelite system within World of Warcraft is fundamentally like quite challenging to do from a combat design perspective. So that's like a fundamental issue. Like that's just an L that they kind of have to take, which, it must be doing their heads in, right? Because they're certainly going to know that. And I think you can just see some of the design issues they've ran into there with the anima powers. Now, there are times, and especially when things get super busted in like alpha or beta, but like when I'm playing Torghast, I'm mostly thinking about my health and damage and not really super special tactics. So that's how it is now. If they had way more in the way of anima powers, and they were willing to let the anima powers just be busted and stupid fun. Because, you're playing Binding of Isaac, right? What's the run you remember? It's the run where all of the stars aligned.
Yep.
And you were busted for a while. They don't have as many of those in Torghast.
There was a time where you could get this one buff, and this one buff would, if you destroyed 100 pots, it would make your slam do 4,000% extra damage. And then you could get 5 of these or 4 of these, and you could get 4 of these buffs at the same time. And then you could get another buff that made the target take 200% extra damage if you did like a charge or heroic leap. And then you can get another buff that allowed you to do like a piercing howl that would make them take another 200% damage. And these are all multiplicative. And so I applied all of these, and on like layer 5 or 6 of the Twisting Corridors, the last boss, I hit it for 13 million and one shot the bitch.
Yeah.
That was one of the coolest moments ever. It was so awesome, man. Well, I still remember it.
The thing with roguelikes is, what is the reward to roguelikes typically? Yes, there are these more like the rogue legacy, kind of the evolution of roguelikes where there is an overworld progression and all of that. Like, yes, that does exist now. But the real reason you play a roguelike is for the gameplay. And it creates that flow that Bell mentioned at the very beginning of the episode when he was talking about PoE. You get into a game state flow where you're like, okay, I'm going to go for this run again. I think that I want to do this, but I'm presented with different options. And now I just went down a route that I didn't even expect to see before the game actually started. And you are aiming for those memories like the one that you just mentioned, Asmon, and you want to have that feeling. And I think that this just shows once again when you look at Torghast, it is the worst critical game playthrough that you could possibly have on what it means to be a roguelike genre. Mm-hmm. It's just completely off base. And that's why I don't have that much faith in the game really anytime soon improving, is because if you can't play a roguelike and understand what is so good about it and then put the Blizzard polish on it, then you're not Blizzard anymore. That was what Blizzard was good at doing. Blizzard would look at a genre and say, this is the reason why it's fun. Let's just make it better. We're going to put a bigger budget on it. We're going to make it feel even smoother, and it is going to be the best of the genre. That's what WoW was. That was what Diablo was in a lot of ways. And look, that was what Overwatch was too. And over time, I just feel like they've really lost their grip on it. And they're not able to look at a genre, understand why it's fun, understand the gameplay loops, create that game flow state, and just do it with more polish. And I think that's why the Blizzard gamer doesn't exist anymore.
It's a tricky one to apply, because, like, let's just say you're making a roguelike, right? Maybe you've got a dodge roll with iframes. You can design that as a core part of your combat. Maybe you have a, swing your sword to deflect a spell back. There's all of those different things that tie into the intricate nature of, of a roguelike combat model. The problem then with World of Warcraft is they don't have those tools. I mean, sure, like a mage can blink and stuff like that, but you guys know what I mean. Like, as, generic just character movement and core character kit. And I think that means that doing a roguelite's really hard for them. And I'm not exactly sure what could fix this from a combat model perspective, but it's just that sort of thing, like, you're going through, maybe you've only got so much in terms of interrupts on your character. And it's like, yeah, there's multiple interruptible abilities. You kind of feel like you should interrupt all of them, but you just don't have enough stuff in your character. Then maybe, right, you could interrupt something, but this is something probably people had. If you know the one, if it's one of the torments, if you fall below 40% HP, you are feared for 3 seconds or something like that. I love that one. It's cool. So it's that sort of thing where you're trying to engage the game system, but because of that torment and the fact that you are taking on all this unavoidable white damage, which might take you below 40%, that torment then robs you of your ability to engage with the game system. And yeah, you can just say, yeah, well, don't go below 40% HP, 5-head. And I think if it was in a game where there was more avoidable damage via player skill or something like that, then you could say that. But in WoW, there's so much unavoidable damage that it basically it makes the combat model really hard. In my head, Torghast would probably be better if it had fewer enemies. It was less based on, trash and stuff like that. And it was more like sets of highly engaging mini-bosses and environmental challenges. Because your core kit that works really well in World of Warcraft is like, your core class utility and movement. So doubling down on that instead of, a whole bunch of packs of mobs that each have a unique little way to dick you about, but, you don't always feel like you got the ideal tools, and it doesn't feel intricately designed because they've got to make that gameplay work for every single spec in the game, which is fundamentally hard and why some people have a far better time in Torghast than others, depending on what they play. So it's a bit weird. Again, with Torghast, it's like, did they set themselves up to fail? I mean, I know I was guilty of getting excited about the idea of Torghast, and, we all got our busted builds in alpha and beta, and we're just kind of like, oh my god, this is so cool. But, maybe there were just fundamental design things there. I mean, certainly for me, horrific visions were a bit more good.
In my opinion, I don't think that the alpha was good either. Like, I think the alpha was just fun at the very beginning because it was really hard and the choices that you made mattered. But you would snowball so fast, and then at that point, you would just get to it was like 72 fours or something. You started at 25, and at 454, you were just running through, spamming any ability that you have on your keyboard, one-shotting everything on the screen. It was actually the most boring thing ever. And in my opinion, I agree with you. Like, there's so many trash mobs and so many other, just basically wastes of time that it's boring. Like, the people want to see Mage Tower bosses in Torghast. And, I went and I did the Adamant Vaults. And I finally went up against the Corrupted Trash Can itself, the big purple thing. And I killed it, and it did, 3 different things. I'm sorry, but that's not good enough. You have to make a better boss, especially after I've been playing a lot of these Final Fantasy bosses that are just super fucking intricate. They're really intricate. They've got a million different mechanics to them, and they have different phase changes, etc. There's just nothing to it, man. These bosses have 2 or 3 abilities. How is that
Yeah, and then it's that weird thing where you can get in these situations if you haven't got good anima powers, so you haven't scaled in line with the floors. You have a boss where it's not mechanically interesting, but it just takes ages. No. And because you haven't scaled as well, you can die really easily. And that's a situation that'll just breed frustration. And it's kind of weird. There is definitely blame to put in Blizzard for this because, they ultimately did ship it, and a back of the box feature has been kind of screwed for ages. But at the same sort of, I don't know, the same, or the other side of the coin or whatever is, they probably thought it was a great idea in principle, and I think it was a good idea in principle, but I think the cat was out of the bag. It was a core feature they announced. They kind of had to ship it, and getting it right is just taking a long ass time. And then it's the sort of thing, did they greenlight that system really not being super aware, or maybe not being able to intuit all of the design challenges that we know it has had since? And then that makes you wonder if you're going to do some sort of risk analysis and whether you greenlight that feature versus doing something that's a bit more simple. Well, could you just do the simple thing? And that has a higher percentage chance of successing instead of all these Schlieffen plans or Schlieffen plans for itch. That's the thing.
Think about it like this. So the subjugator guy in Torghast, where he puts the purple things, and if you hit the purple things, they diminish your power, and you have to use his power. That is so good. That is such good design. And the reality is that they actually already had mobs that were more engaging than a lot of the stuff that we have in Torghast back in Timeless Isle. And the mobs, those Ordos mobs, do you know why they were really engaging? Is because if you fucked up one of the mechanics, you were dead. That was it.
Yeah?
Like, they would hit you for like 400k, and most players had 300k. It was insane. And those kinds of mobs were great because they were engaging, because you actually had to avoid the mechanics. But usually the meta for Torghast is not, it's not how do I avoid these mechanics? It's how can I outgear this mechanic to where it just doesn't exist? And it's basically like a good example of this is like, it's a classic WoW with world buffs. If you watch any boss in classic WoW with world buffs, you're going to think that it's even easier than it already is. Like, Prophet Scarum dies in 20 seconds. He doesn't cast any arcane explosions. Nobody even gets MC'd, and they just auto attack him down, and that's it. Of course, that's not going to be fun to play regularly. It's just crazy. And I think that's what the problem is.
Some of it comes down to white damage again. Like, you had the shieldy boys at the first rise, the Ordos area.
Oh, yeah.
You had the shieldy boys with the frontal slam thing. You had the fire raining about the place. They didn't rail you with white damage, with auto attacks as much. And that would mean that on your fresh alt, you could go and you could fight them, being a bit under geared, but you could play around their mechanics. And that was super satisfying, especially as you then went through the Time of Siles gearing loop. Whereas that just doesn't happen as much now. I mean, you go to Torghast, right? And you see so many mobs that are just hard casting damage on you. Now, imagine if there was less mobs, but they were actually casting, a frontal cone or attack patterns, right? You get what I mean. And then even for the melee guys, you had some of the similar things. And you just take away some of that white damage. You put more of it onto abilities. You try to ensure that there aren't torments like that 40% one that are just doubling down and you getting fucked and sort of denying you from counterplay. And then you can have a combat design that works, I think, a lot better there. But I think with Torghast, there is too much signal to noise. The bits where I found the signal, I have quite a bit of fun and I like it. But there's too much noise in the combat design.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you with the white damage, and I think the difference there is massive. I remember whenever people would do, what was the guy on like the bridge on the way over to Ordos? It was like Cinder something.
Yeah. The toy that flings you around. That was good shit.
Yes, I have one stack of it. Yes, I have to get another one. And so I remember back whenever he came out, and you would see every boosted warrior. And he would cast that cone, and the boosted warriors would just die. All of them would just fall down. And it was so cool because he did these abilities that were very fast, and you had to react to them very quickly. You couldn't think, you just had to react. And like now with Torghast, like they don't really have that anymore. There's not that type of gameplay. And it's so weird that we had this gameplay in Time Wasile, we had this gameplay in the Mage Tower, and now somehow we don't. How is that possible? And I do think that Blizzard, I think by the end of the expansion, by the end of Shadowlands, Torghast will be genuinely good. I really believe it. I think it's on the right direction, at least. I can say that. But what I worry about is whenever the expansion after Shadowlands comes out, and Torghast is just kicked to the curb. And that's it. And we have to spend the entire expansion. We have to spend the entire expansion playing through and beta testing a system, and it finally gets better, and then they throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, like our experience is the cost of their risky bets.
Yes.
And I'm no longer, it's like, I think my willingness for benefit of the doubt or whatever has just went down and down over time, because I think the mistakes they make are thematic. And it's really weird, and it's a bit doomery, but I almost just want them to be a bit more conservative with it. Like, a bit more just keep it simple, stupid. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, man, I think that's basically the core of it. And then it's that thing where it's all these expansion build-around features. And it's the sort of thing, even if you could scale Torghast up, well, Torghast's whole, reward loop was designed around Soul Cinders and Soul Ash, so would that really make a bunch of sense in the next expansion? Whereas, from what I understand, the Palace of the Dead, or whatever it's called in FF, is, like Matt was explaining to me that, I could, if I say get up to whatever level I want to roll a new job, I could level that new job in that thing. Now, I'd really hope that they leave Torghast, in some sort of position where Blizzard basically say, oh yeah, Torghast, well, we dealt with that problem in the Shadowlands. Now the Covenants have banded together. They've controlled the whole thing. And Torghast is now basically used as a training proving ground or whatever. And then they basically change Torghast up to make it an evergreen feature where if I want to level up a fresh alt, I can maybe do some Torghast stuff, right? Make a new little reward system. And then
I'd rather do that than level. Like, I'd rather do that than what's that bullshit where you have to fill up the bar that takes forever? What's it called again? I don't even
Dreads of
remember.
Fate.
There it is.
Oh, so much potential, but they crammed that in at the end of beta.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, if you're just about like Diablo adventure mode inspired stuff, they could have done so much more. But again, that comes back to like production issues, right? I mean, they clearly, like, that meme, small indie company?
Multi-dollar company.
Yeah, multi-dollar company. Why the fuck are we saying that? Their quarterly takings was like, what, 400 and something million? That's a lot of cash.
Sorry, bro. Can only do 4 recolors, man. We can only do 4 recolors the same amount, man. We can't hire new people. What do you mean? How you do that?
They fired a lot of really good people too.
They sure did. They sure did.
That's what's weird there. They're from what I understand, like, morale is basically in a very bad spot in the WoW team, and they've had like, challenges or whatever. There's a bunch of people leaving. That said, if we're to listen to our favorite guy in the universe, Bobby Kotick, which, by the way, we've looked into we did this for like another video we haven't done yet, but we looked into his backstory. It's actually fucking fascinating. Dude has been hustling so damn well for so long. It's very cool. But anyway,
I've met Mr. Kotick. Maybe twice.
He's probably a nice guy, isn't he?
He's the fucking man. I'm gonna be honest. I will say, when I met him, I was like, wow, like, I'm actually inspired, which doesn't happen very often. When he came in to actually back at the MLG days when we got acquired by Activision, he was a very, as a boss or whoever he wasn't obviously the person I was directly answering to, but he did a good job at getting everybody really excited. And back then, Activision Blizzard was on like the Forbes top 100 companies to work for. You don't usually get to stay on the list when you fire like 25% of your employees or whatever the heck it was. So I don't think they're on the list anymore. But it was one of those things where, you can tell that he's very intelligent and he knows how to make money. The problem is Blizzard and a lot of the gamers that were playing the games come from a completely different style of production, which was Mike Morhaim's vision and the vision of a lot of the original employees of WoW, where it truly was gameplay first. Gameplay first for a AAA studio, and this is why I don't think AAA studios are going to be the way of the land forever. I don't think that you need a AAA studio anymore because distribution has changed so much. But when you look at AAA studios, the best way to make money is not to put gameplay first. It's to do what WoW is doing right now. And that's why I can't see WoW coming back. Because one of the questions I wanted to ask you over the past 5 years, Bellular, is what would you do to change WoW? And I know no matter what you say, it will not make as much money as pumping out an expansion with new features that aren't tested, because that gets box sales. You see a new thing and you go, wait, this might be good. Let me try it. They put the new shiny toys on there on the box to get people to buy it. Who cares if they suck? You already spent the money on the box. And then you want this fucking mount? You're trapped for 6 months. Ha 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 ha. They laugh their money to the bank. They're probably making more money than they've ever made before. Why the fuck would they want to change? Why would they want to change? It's like, even if you are making the worst content ever, even if it's morally not right, you move to a different country to make the same thing if you're getting the bag. Anybody would do that. I don't care if you're an individual. I don't care if you are a AAA studio. They are making more money making a game like this, and you almost can't blame a company, right? But they're not our friends. They're not our friends. We shouldn't be Blizzard gamers anymore. They are a company, and they are doing what they can to grab the bag, and that's it.
So what's happened, right, is feedback loops. Like the engineering concept of a feedback loop. Real fucking important. Thing is, WoW never really had, I think, much of a feedback loop, because even if they messed up, all the people would come back. They were an incumbent. They were dominant in the market. They had, I think, a very well moated player base. Moated basically, being like that, kind of the defenses around the player base. And it's one of the reasons why FF won't completely kill WoW, because a lot of people want the WoW style of fantasy. So they were this incumbent for the longest time, to the point where they basically never felt the sting of their losses. And that basically means that there was less of an incentive to, I think anyway, less an incentive to deeply engage with, with issues. And I think this is something that has happened more and more and more as time has went on. Because I think it's one of those things, right? If you try to objectively say, Wrath of the Lich King versus, a new expansion, it's a bit of a pointless statement, because they're all products of their time. And what matters is how good they were in comparison to everything else. So it's that thing where right now, in the past, they were doing their thing the best. Right now, they have made the game smaller and smaller and smaller. I think you could say maybe more focused, but it is that very gameplay oriented sort of top end progression content. There's not as much room for the transmoggers, the RPers, the collectors, things like that. And there's not a lot of new, what would you say, massive engineering projects going into giving you guys cool new features you really care about. Like, let's just say they're like, hey there, Asmongold, tintable armor, you get to unlock the dice, and you get a whole bunch, like a whole new system. But not, it's not some big new content thing. Mm-hmm. It's just something that fundamentally stands to WoW forever. So basically your issue is games got more focused over time. Other things in the market have been bubbling up and bubbling up and bubbling up. And I think with WoW, it just finally got to the stage where they had accumulated enough thematic losses. I think saying thematic is super important because, humans, we recognize patterns and, we feel themes emotionally, right? And when the theme, the underlying theme of the WoW team's mistakes has been kind of consistent in spite of player feedback, then people start to look elsewhere. And I think your big difference is that Final Fantasy XIV has finally reached a stage where, off the back of Shadowbringers, it's just fucking incredible. And we're finally at that stage where World of Warcraft, I think, is going to have a viable feedback loop because there is viable competition. Like, and PvP MMOs were... Yeah, like a PvP MMO Crowfall was never going to take out World of Warcraft, right? I don't even think Ashes of Creation would be taking out World of Warcraft for what modern WoW is. But what FF14 is big theme park MMO. It's a different flavor of the game WoW's playing, but it is the same game, and it's really fucking good. So finally we have the feedback loop. So I think that just means that whatever, pressure, Blizzard are actually going to feel it. I think we're finally at the stage where they're going to feel their losses. I mean, we've been doing preliminary work looking into basically just a bunch of participation metrics. And like one of the things I saw was Mythic Plus. And I'm fairly sure that the first week of Season 2 saw less Mythic Plus participation than Season 4 of BFA, which is like late into an expansion. That's fucking spooky, dude.
That's very bad.
That shouldn't be happening.
I mean, I do want to say too, and this is coming from somebody who probably loves Final Fantasy right now more than most, right? I love the game. It has the biggest advantage ever right now. Like, imagine if the tables were turned and Final Fantasy was king right now, or had been king for a really long time, and we were going back to World of Warcraft, and you had all of Classic, all of TBC, all of Wrath, and all of these things to play through. Final Fantasy, for a lot of people, it's the first time they're looking at it, and they have so much content to go through. The one thing, though, that I will give credit to Final Fantasy that is really special about the game is the fact that content does still feel valid. And if the tables were turned and you went through and you started the WoW journey at the very beginning, everything's invalidated. Why wouldn't you get a boost? Of course you're going to go through and get a boost. And
bro, the content from 7 years ago is more relevant than WoW's content from 7 months ago.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Imagine how fun
WoW would be. The case?
Imagine how fun it would be if you did a time walking dungeon, and if time walking was relevant, and you actually got to play the old rotations. and like you got to play like old Demonology Warlock, or you got to play like old things like that.
Or how about this? How
That'd be
about you
so
just get
fun.
to play a boss that isn't a fucking joke? Like the bosses are just jokes, man. Like you go back and you do Kolgarn. Oh wow, there's 2 green beams you have to walk away from. Why don't you add in some new mechanics, make them do some more raid damage, and then you'll see an actual fight. Then you'll have some fun. But you just sit around in this LFR zombie garbage fucking conveyor belt to just get shitty gear that you don't want. And yeah, big fucking surprise, nobody cares about it. Like, it's so sad. And the thing is, you had a little inkling of that with the Old War time walking because you could activate the hard modes. And I think that was really cool. But the fact that I could go in there on the first day and just completely clear it with a random pug kind of goes to show that it wasn't really as hard as it should have been. And I would have loved to see them do that, especially like with some of these old raids. Like I always thought like one of the best ideas would be, you know how they got rid of original Nax? Add back in original Nax for the anniversary for 1 week every single year. Put back all the old gear that the game used to have, make it ridiculously fucking hard, and then make it to where the only way you can get that loot is through Master Looter. Imagine that.
That'll never. No, everything else could happen there other than Master Looter.
Yeah.
They'll never change that one.
You're probably right, yeah. Well, they don't have they had to fire the GMs that dealt with those tickets. So I mean, like, yeah, I can't do that anymore. Right? But like, dude, that would create so much content. Imagine waiting all year for an item and have that shit ninja'd. Oh my god. And then like figuring out like what oh my, it would just be so good. And they don't really even try to do anything like that. And it's sad.
There's like a simple thing. An expansion shouldn't be subtractive. And like in Final Fantasy XIV, an expansion is not subtractive. And like, imagine if we could just go into a rock hard version of, I don't know, Shadow Moon Burial Grounds. That'd be sweet. That would be sweet. Like what we said about Torghast earlier on. So, I mean, I don't know exactly how they do it, but I mean, come on, the Caverns of Time exist. You have the narrative framing to make it happen.
Well, they just say like, listen, they're like, hey, look, it's like with the primals in Final Fantasy, like, so they're back again. And what's so crazy about them this time is that they're more powerful. We don't even know why it happened, but you've got to go deal with it. And it's like, okay, all right, that sounds good. It's like you're playing whack-a-mole with these, like, you know, fucking, like, world-defining forces of nature. You're like, oh, shit, Ifrit's up again, you know, Garuda, and you're just knocking them back down. And it's ridiculous whenever you think about it, but nobody gives a fuck because the game's fun.
Actually, it's not. It makes a lot of sense in the lore. But one of the things that I will say about how the entire thing is set up with Final Fantasy, I beat ARR like 2 days ago or something like that. And my experience for beating ARR was relatively similar to the experience that people had all of those years ago when they beat it. You know, when I went through the story and had those moments, I could share that experience with players who've been playing the game for such a long time and have a shared experience, and we could understand each other, and I felt like I was part of the community. In WoW, when new people come in, the conversation is, nah, you have no idea. You have no idea what I went through to get here. To get this neckbeard, you have no idea what I had to do. This is what my experience was like. You don't have that shared experience, and I feel like that's one of the reasons that the WoW community is so divided, because they have already broken us apart. We're all on our own placid island of ignorance with a different experience, and we can't even relate to the new people who are trying to come into the game. So why are they going to try to join our community? The community doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, there definitely isn't one. It's sharded. There's 3 people in every community.
Yeah. It's a completely different experience. People don't get to feel what we felt the first time that we played WoW. And yes,
here's another one, right? Is that like I saw the 1.0, and I think that we should also like I want to talk about some of the other MMOs, because obviously Final Fantasy is like the front and center one, but we've got a lot of other ones coming out. But one thing I wanted to say was that the 1.0 the extinction event, right? The apocalypse. You could see it happen, and then that shit played a huge cutscene. Imagine if WoW did events in game like Fortnite. Imagine if Sargeras stabbing Azeroth was an in-game event, and Sargeras was literally the fucking skybox, and you could see the sword getting closer. And then there was a moment where the sword would hit the ground and everybody in Silithus would just immediately die. that would be incredible. And you could watch it from the mountaintops of like all around Kalimdor. And then afterwards it played this crazy cinematic of it happening, etc. That would be so awesome, man.
They could have the Metallica concert in game, and they could have the dude kick over the sword.
It was something crazy like that. And there's no reason why they can't do that. But everybody knows why that wouldn't happen. Because if they had that many people in the zone, it'd crash.
It would die.
It would be done. It'd be done.
Tech.
It sucks.
Tech. I don't know, like, if you gave some of their engineers, like, hey, what is your wish list of shit you'd like to make? By the way, it's really expensive. You need a bigger team. You know, whatever. What would that actually look like? Because it seems like there is so much virtual world stuff that, you know, it's like all of WoW's efforts have went into instanced content. But it's like less and less and less has went into the world bit, which is a bit friggin' funny when you think about the title of the game, right?
yeah, it's a little bit weird. I think that, like, really, it's like if you're in the top 10% or you're in the bottom 10% of players, WoW is just your game. But Blizzard has this idea that you either are a top 1% player or you're just some guy who plays the game. You know, you've got 5 jobs, 10 kids, and 3 wives, and you've only got 15 seconds a month to play the game. And they have to somehow make it to where you can still kill the end boss. And this happens, and you see these guys, the content loop that these people have to play through. Of course, they're quitting the game. Of course they're not going to play that. And all of the people in the middle, just like your average semi-hardcore players, like the classic WoW players that get all up in arms about 3 spell power upgrades in Molten Core, who gives a fuck? But they do, and it's because it's character progression. And Blizzard has convinced themselves that only the top players care about making their character better. Whereas the reality is that I think almost everybody that plays RPGs wants to make their character as good as possible. Mm-hmm. And that middle chunk of 80% players, those are the people that aren't happy. And I think that if you're like a top-end Mythic Raider, I think that Shadowlands probably isn't as bad as if you're just an average player.
Depending on your Shard of Domination drops, there are some RWF people right now who are basically being put in the bench for bad RNG. But I get your I get it. It's like if you're just in that general middle. I mean, like, man, you've got Korthia, and it's like, what's going on? What's, you know, the hamlet of secrets, the suburb of secrets, not the city of secrets. You know, it's just like that middle of the road content, that optional evergreen feeling content as well. It's like shit like Deaths of Chromie was really cool. Pity is I did it in PTR, so I haven't done it in live, which is totally me being stupid. But like, it's awesome. Deaths of Chromie is awesome. More things like that, more reputations, more things that are progressing your character in a way that is not just a mount, a pet, and an item level. And I think an issue there is Blizzard have basically fundamentally underinvested in new ways to progress your character. I mean, you look at, say, Guild Wars 2 and its mastery system, where, you know, in that game, a new expansion comes out, it doesn't add a new level cap. You just get new masteries. And those masteries can, you know, be important things you need, or they can be like, you know, fun utility things. You know, what if a World of Warcraft ends up properly codifying that, you know, I'm a hunter, right? But no, I'm the fucking hunt master of True Shot Lodge. And that is a thing that happens just between expansions, to the point where, you know, I do stuff for them in the various different expansions, and I can get new generic hunter abilities or powers or things that I can access. You know, evergreen fantasy-based progression, because this is an MMORPG in a fantasy setting. It is not, you know, it's what they're making right now is a slice of what World of Warcraft should be, I think. So that's why I can still log in, you know, go into Sanctum of Domination, right? You know,
it's a great
play
raid.
Painsmith, have fun, kind of rage at a few people who do dumb shit in Painsmith, do some dumb shit myself, have a great time, right? That's fucking awesome. They're so good at that stuff. But it's like they have lost focus on the broader World of Warcraft. I wonder what the cause of that shift in institutional focus is at Blizzard. I mean, I know that.
I mean, think about it, right? It's like, who are they hiring? They're going to hire the people that are just like the casuals? Nah, man, they're hiring the people that are like the top end raiders. So, big surprise, you hire a lot of top end raiders, top end players, and then they make content that's top end raider, top end player centric.
Yeah, you hire theory crafters and you get stuff that is spreadsheet content.
Yeah, big surprise.
I mean, look at the difference between how the developers are interacting with the community in Final Fantasy and how they are in World of Warcraft, right? I mean, back in the day in World of Warcraft, you had like the elite Tauren chieftains, right? Like the devs felt like they were our boys back in the day. Chris Metzen came on the stage, everybody's like, oh my god, like ripping off their shirts, begging them to sign their tits. Like it was fucking insane. And now you look at the Final Fantasy devs, and I'm watching FanFest. I'm watching all this stuff, and it feels like that still. All of this time later, you know, they're doing the twinning dance, like, and our devs are saying, "Hey, don't you guys have phones?" It's so absurd how different it is. Asmon runs into a problem in the game. What happens? The devs try to help, and they try to make the experience better, not only for Asmon, but the 100,000, 200,000 people who are watching because they care about the experience.
Blizzard doesn't give a fuck about stream sniping. And you get these people that spend like, so we were trying to do a tournament and WoW, and we had these clowns making Tauren sitting on totems for like hours.
God X, dude.
And Blizzard didn't do a fucking thing. Like, imagine that happening in Final Fantasy. I really couldn't. That guy would be gone in a second.
Do they have the GMs?
Well,
do they give a shit about community?
They don't give a shit. That's the thing. They have the people. They could easily solve this problem.
You remember Dope Boy Magic and Crunkaholic? They used to follow me around in Legion. It was everybody. It was all they did. They had a YouTube channel, I'm pretty sure, of them just stream sniping people with the rogue shoulders. And they would sit in stealth, they would build up their stacks, and they'd one-shot everybody. And you'd watch these guys one-shot, like, some of the best WoW players, like the best PvPers, completely uninteractive gameplay. And the devs never did anything about it. They were like, yeah, you know what? Like, this is working as intended. And it's just so crazy, the message that sends.
I think it's just because they're in their bunker. Like, I don't think it's intent. In a lot of cases, I don't think any of this shit's intent. I think it's, okay, so you can get the best person in the world, but you throw them in a situation or a system, right, where they're just set up to fail. You know, it's like just shit stacked against them. And I'm fairly sure that that's what's going on. I think there's instances where the left hand isn't talking to the right hand. I think you have that, right? Systems problems, internal company culture problems, you know? What's their feedback process like? Even what's their project management software like when they go to work from home? I mean, fucking hell, I've used a little bit of Jira myself. I wouldn't wish the damn thing in anyone. But you then just think, like, how well actually set up are they? Do you have little cliques forming within the development team? Do you have people that are siloed off? Is that why you get just some of these bizarre issues? Do you have particular teams that feel a bit understaffed? Like, I obviously do not know any of that shit, but whenever you see what should be competent people at a big company and the whole thing's going to shit and stuff is less than the sum of its parts, like, is it intent? Do they actually intend to go into work and make a not particularly good game full of friction and pain points? No, but I think it's probably that they try, but they have a whole bunch of issues. And obviously there are cultural issues, you know, maybe regarding feedback or something like that, you know, could lead to the appearance of not caring. Or, you know, maybe acting as if they didn't care, you know, stuff like that. So I just wonder what it's like internally at Blizzard. I feel like if you pulled back the curtain, or if we pulled back the curtain, we'd probably understand a lot more about why, like, what should be a fairly easy win in my head, or at least something where you could make an expansion that would do well, be pretty risk-free, and result in positive sentiment. It feels like that shouldn't be as hard as it seems to be.
It seems like, especially whenever you've got everything set up for you to knock it down, right? I mean, like, especially with a lot of this stuff. I mean, and it's even like the lore. I wanted to talk about this because Bellular, you've made a lot of lore videos, man. Like, what do you think about the new cinematic, and like, where do you think this is gonna go?
Okay, right. Wow. There's so many ways to go with this one. So, I mean, as they've been saying, he's got the 5 sigils, bros. What are we gonna do? The sigils. Can you believe it, boys? He's got the sigils. You know, the sigils that you guys care about and are so, you know, deep and meaningful. It's like, no, none of that shit's been established. So they have these really weird things, and this has really happened since BFA, since they kind of, and you know, it's weird. I don't think it's literally this, but I do feel like I'm part of the problem on why the storytelling, because it's that sort of thing where the lore is cool, but it's how it's told that matters, right, to players emotionally. It just feels like they make shit so that I can do reaction videos. So I'd be like, okay, so right, you're all confused, but this is why that happened. This is when that thing was foreshadowed. Yeah, it was. That's the really weird thing. I think the storytelling is very strange. I wonder what flip-flops they've had internally and things. But like regarding Sylvanas, you know, if they do give her a redemption arc that is based on her getting a complete soul again, that is a really weird way to do it, because sure, Zovaal giving her soul back means that she can, you know, be a complete person and reflect on all this shitty things she's done, and she will suffer because of that. But I feel like that's a bit of a cop-out getting us a complete Sylvanas. I think it would be way more interesting if Zovaal was like, oh yeah, you betrayed me. Here's your soul. I was going to give it back to you, but fuck you. It's destroyed. Now Sylvanas has realized that the reason why she's been, you know, a little bit moody for the last 20 years or whatever, however many years, is because, you know, now she realizes what's happened to her soul. And maybe her new arc is that she actually has to work for what she's going to get and earn it. So there's like little storytelling things there. I mean, storytelling, right? Like books. You know, why is it that we're waiting for World of Warcraft Sylvanas, the novel that will come out in February 2022, to get the full picture, right? Like, no, you tell the story in game. Like FF14 does have its
read a book.
The only time I ever enjoyed,
it doesn't matter in FF.
The only time I ever enjoyed the World of Warcraft lore was watching Nobble's channel. I watched a lot of Nobble's channel, and that made me love the lore a lot. And then the only other time I read Chronicle. Imagine me reading a book. I read Chronicle. I read the first one of Chronicle, and it was really fucking good. Never did I really feel the story the same way that I could with, like, you know, Final Fantasy, for example. And you look at a lot of the characters and the depth that they actually have. I mean, I'm not going to say anything like too crazy because I know you guys are behind me in the story. But when I look at like, you look at like Garrosh, and Ruban, after being on stream for like 1 minute, is just cooler than Garrosh. Like,
I think Garrosh is an exception. I think Garrosh is fucking awesome.
He's a bitch.
I think that the one cinematic that Garrosh got at the end was absolutely fucking perfect. They finally let him out, and he said, fuck you, fuck the jailer, fuck everybody, I'm gonna blow myself up. And that was it. Like, Garrosh went out like a pimp. And I was so happy that they did that. But I would agree with you on
look like a 10-year-old machinima. Yeah. You know, compare it to, because like
that's true.
You know, for those who are further along in FF, their in-game cinematics are leagues above Blizzard. So it's that sort of thing. I'm seeing this really cool moment with Garrosh, and you know the bit where they do 3 quick cuts into his face. You know, boom, boom, boom. There goes my mic, and you know. The way that he's animating is just, you know, his mouth is flapping up and down. And I'm like, oh, my disbelief, it is really hard to suspend it right now, but I like Garrosh and this is how we should go. But it's like, it shouldn't feel like a weird budget thing.
Yeah. It looked like he was talking like Mizkif talks. I was like, what is going on with Garrosh? And then on top of that, the other thing is too, I don't know if you guys noticed at the very end, they reused the old Varian model. I was like, what the heck is this? They literally reused the same character model.
Jesus.
So there's weird there's weird things in the storytelling.
It's crazy, man. Like, I'm just, I think that the endgame cinematics are definitely, like, they leave a lot to be desired, to say the absolute least. They definitely do. Like, I would love to see, like, whenever they played that cinematic of, like, Sylvanas versus Sarfang, that was so fucking cool, man. Like, that was so awesome because nobody knew it was going to happen. People were, like, kind of expecting something like that, but, like, really, nobody thought this was going to happen in the way it did. It was just amazing, man. And, like, that's the kind of stuff that I think that they need to do more of. Like, in my opinion, I think all of the data mining, it's just, like, everything about, like, it's just so many things about the game that are just, like, they're just dog shit, man. Like, you have to have like all these add-ons to raid. There's like all the patches are like triple, quadruple data mine the second that they come out. Like, what is this, man? What's the excitement?
That cinematic is great, but it's also, I think, a crutch because they can use exceptional quality of execution in the language of cinema to get a whole bunch of wins. And that is cool, right? And we all, like, the whole arc with Starfang was great.
Yeah.
Thing is, though, FF doesn't need to do that to get moments that hit very well for its audience, right? A smile suits a hero. A lot of people will react to that. So what WoW needs to do is actually really simple. It's really simple, and in a way, it could even be cheaper. What they need to do is they need to change their quest system. They need to make it be framed as dialogue, which is how it is done in FF14, where instead of just wall of text, click done, you're actually, you are going through a conversation with a character.
Dude,
Did
you see the video that I did about this?
So, I'm sorry.
I said that WoW told quests is a twit longer, and Final Fantasy tells them like a tweet. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like I completely agree with you. Like I read a WoW quest, it's like fuck that. Well, I'm not gonna read that. But if it's like just 2 lines, it's like now he says this is what's gonna happen. We have to go over here. It's like okay, yeah, I got it.
Like if you're there's a subtlety to that though, because you can install the add-on immersion for World of Warcraft and it will immediately improve your quest like log experience.
Didn't they shut your shit down for that?
So immersion was man, okay, I need to like get a build of WoW Tales working and like send it to you guys. I thought it was awesome, but anyway, that was piggybacking off immersion, and we worked with the developer of immersion. Seriously, fucking get immersion. It will make your like WoW questing so much better. Thing is though, it can't do everything because it's just an add-on. They need to fundamentally reframe that as dialogue, because when you're doing that shit with an FF character, like with an NPC, you're clicking through dialogue and your character is actually having a conversation. And that is the big thing. That is why over time you develop this relationship with a character that doesn't exist. And that's why there are people that, get the crying moments as time goes on. They need to do that. Then, if you want to do, oh dear, the Chuckler's got his sigils, what are we going to do about this? Those sigils needed to be established earlier on. We needed to have far more communicated stakes in-game, not inside a bunch of cinematics that were, like, dropped from doing the boring Torghast Bolvar thingy. No, these sigils should have been framed as being important like the Pillars of Creation from the very start. They should have then been made not just MacGuffins, but MacGuffins that are essential to the characters of the Covenants. And whenever the Archon gets, ran through with Shalamorn, case whatever they call it, should have died. Because that would show us that, oh shit, this being that Ian told us was like a Titanish level of power got killed. I guess we're fucked. And with that, those sigils would have been better established, and we would have felt a looming sense of dread. Doubly so if Sylvanas was then an active character during the leveling process, so that we were actually fighting against her, thwarting her plans. You know how like some of the shit was pretty good when you're in the Warlords of Draenor questing with the Iron Horde, and there's those little bits where you kind of feel like, oh, right, they're going to rinse their Draenei and fuck us all. But they didn't do that. It's like a few people told them that Arthas felt like a Saturday morning cartoon and that he popped up too much, and then they got terrified of showing their villains in-game. Where it's like, no, I have to know Sylvanas in-game. And I think there's some people who have... It was Matt who was telling me that there's a few times where FF14 runs the risk of like you spending a bit too much time with the villain and it feeling like a little bit, I don't know, Saturday morning cartoon or some shit. But the thing that matters is that it works. Players actually get screen time and their character gets a relationship. Oh, and also... final point in this goddamn tirade, stop this othering generic language of Maw Walker. No one calls anyone Maw Walker. Piss off. That is so alienating to the player, right? If you're going to just have, a little variable, just reference, whatever player title, call me Huntmaster. Sure, because, at least I did that thing in Legion. And even that thing where, Jaina, right? We saved Jaina from Torghast. There's a bit of dialogue in 9.1 where Jaina's like, she gets confused and they write it so it's like another Maw Walker saved her. And it's like, yeah, I get it. She got confused all the time torture and stuff. But to the player, that just makes you feel so othered, so disposable, so just another Maw Walker. So there's a whole bunch of stuff here that is basically, it's like the geeky, nerdy shit of narrative design, which, some of that's close to like what we're doing with our first game. which you know, it's I guess why it's maybe a focus for me, but it's like there are so many easy wins and ways where they could actually get away with not doing expensive cinematics that would make the story better. Whew, tirade over.
No, I mean you're right though, but I mean you bring up so many of these different moments that I think are really good examples of just showing how much bad storytelling there actually is right now in WoW 2. Like you bring up MacGuffins, you bring up like having like a bruiser archetype that's strictly there to show the level of power that you're actually up against. Like all of these cheap tricks seem to be the entire crux of what's going on in the game storytelling. It's just not good storytelling. I actually think that Jupiter Ascending has better story than World of Warcraft currently. I cared more about Mr. Scalligan than I care about Sylvanas. And that's just not the experience I've had with Final Fantasy at all.
I'm glad that movie has a fan.
Dude, I actually, if somebody gave me $1 billion to do one thing, I would remake Jupiter Ascending. There's something there, you know. But hey, look, we've already seen even $1 billion isn't enough to necessarily make a good game or a good story.
True. So. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can't necessarily buy the quality. But I do want to talk a little bit about, especially about buying quality. How do you guys feel about New World and Ashes of Creation? I mean, we talked a lot about Final Fantasy. I mean, Bellular, have you had any time to play any Ashes of Creation or New World? Where are you at?
All right, I'm the noob. I have no fucking idea. I've been really busy with other shit. So, you know what? For this segment, convince me. Why? Why do I care? What should, what am I looking out for?
So,
I mean, like, I've seen the Kickstarter trailer of Ashes, but that's mostly it. And my vibe from that was, cool, this seems like they're really going for the shared virtual world thing, and they're doubling down on that, which seemed neat to me.
So, with Ashes, the alpha looks great. It looks great. Obviously, it's a technical alpha, so there's not really a whole lot I can do to convince you with that. Like, come back to me in a year, and I'll convince you with Ashes. With New World...
Maybe 3 years.
Maybe. With New World, there was a blue tree. And there were all the other trees, but there was one blue tree. And I could cut down any tree in the whole forest, except this blue tree. And my skill level was 30, and I had worked hours to get level 30. And I went to click on this blue tree, and it said I had to get 200. And so what did I do? I spent the next 20 hours cutting down every single fucking tree in the entire New World preview until I got to level 200, and I came back to that blue tree grove, and I cut that bitch down. And it felt so good. I definitely did. And I looked for any time there was a blue tree. I was like, stand back, guys. Don't worry. I'll take care of this situation. And then after that, guess what happened? There was a red tree.
No fucking way.
Oh, shit. They've worked it out.
What'd you do?
Right. And I now the event ended, so I couldn't cut it down. But like the thing is,
escape vibes from that.
Yeah, and it was great. Like the crafting in New World, the leveling, it's so good. Dude.
It is RuneScape in a very good way. I like New World for the same reasons that I like old school RuneScape.
Oh shit, dude! Don't tell me this.
It's a skilling game.
Don't tell me this. I have other things to do.
You can play it on second monitor, dude. You play it while you're relaxing. You can do auto running back and forth to like town. Like it's super passive. It's totally okay.
I'm actually nervous. I'm a little bit nervous with the next, I guess it would be the next alpha or whatever it's going to be for New World or beta, whatever it's going to be.
Me too.
Because the thing is this is going to be the beta or the alpha, whatever. The next testing period. It's going to show us though. Did they double down on all of the things that were really good in the game, or did they try to go wider? Did they try to fix some of the things that weren't its strengths? Like, what was their actual philosophy? Because the game, to me, it wasn't necessarily trees for me, but it was going around and it was skilling. And it was learning all of these different things about crafting. It was learning all these different things that I could just make my numbers higher, bigger number, better person. And that was what I loved about the game. And I hope that they focused in on that. The combat wasn't necessarily the thing that got my jimmies jostled. We'll see what they actually ended up doing. But it seemed like a game that knew what it was, and it didn't try to be World of Warcraft. And that was what I liked about New World a lot.
That's got me actually... Okay, so old school RuneScape, for me back in the day, right? It was cutting down my trees. setting up this whole thing with one of my friends, right, where we were the fucking kingpins of selling arrows. We had a whole network of so it was all that actual virtual world shit. And I remember the player housing came out. The construction skill was there. I'm like, oh shit, I have to cut down a lot of trees. I have to learn how to build. I was like, man, this chair's got a fucking red cushion. Shit. Big. Fucking big. And then, yeah, so that was really good. And then another game that, I never was able to fully get into because of, the social side of it, but EVE Online. EVE is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Those like big dynamic economies and shit. So there's a bit of me, right? A bit of a wet dream game is you have some of those EVE Online vibes and you have some of those old school RuneScape vibes and you maybe put it in a grounded feeling fantasy setting. Are you telling me New World could be going close to that?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. Because
shit.
obviously New World, right? You said you're a history buff. I mean, it seems like very clearly like New World is 1500s America. Okay. And they've added some other factions to try to separate themselves from that. But I feel like obviously the art style, the armor, everything like that is somewhere around there.
It's like Conquistador looking.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at the helmets of the cinematic. I mean, absolutely. And it looks so cool. And I love the aesthetic of the game. I am so excited for it. And what I'm excited for is not just to only play New World, but it's to play that sometimes and then play other stuff too. People are saying 17.
Yes.
Sure, whatever. But like all I'm saying is it's like old school whenever you had, hatchets and tomahawks going up against a musket. It's that time, and I think that's so cool. Like I'm so excited to play the game, man. I honestly think it's going to be really fun for all of those like really casual, fun reasons like crafting and stuff. Like we've already agreed, Rich is going to be the crafter, and I'm going to be the gatherer. I'm going to gather everything, and then Rich is going to make everything that I gather.
I'm just going to be waiting in town for Daddy to get home.
That's right.
That Valheim cooperation. Like you're playing Valheim and you all sort of slip into your natural social roles in the community.
Asmon didn't let me play Valheim. Asmon made me watch him play Valheim. He was like, he'd be like hitting a boss and be like, dude, fucking.
I knew that there's no way he could play it as good as me, and so I just figured he might as well learn from the best. Yeah, I put 200 hours on that game, by the way.
I literally, and I watched like 150 of it. I remember I was like doing paperwork for OTK or some shit, and then Az was like, "Look at this fucking house, dude." I didn't get to play it all. By the time I actually got to play,
look how fast I can kill this guy, dude. Watch, if I shoot this guy, well, he's dead so fast, right? Look at that, dude.
Dude, Asmon gave me a personal stream of him looking for a sea serpent. He literally, like, for 20 hours. Not when I was watching. We never found one. Yeah, if you remember, you streamed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you couldn't find one. And you started spawning random shit into the world. You started cheating.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. I went on that other server, and I started doing that. Did you play Valheim, Bellular?
Yep. Yeah, no, I played it for like 30, 40 hours with the WoW Guild whenever, cleared Nathria. No one gave a shit about Shadowlands for a bit. Oh, it's so elegant. That's what I loved about it. It was such an elegant design, and it wasn't super prescriptive in player roles, right? So you just you're like, oh shit, me and the boys just landed here.
Hey,
we've got to sort our shit out, and you naturally find your little, like, I loved building and gathering and crafting. Other people loved combat, and we actually, you feel like you've got that little community developing. It's what I loved about the promise of EVE. In EVE, I remember doing mining with people, and it was like, cool. You know what? Maybe I'm less into the mining. There's a thing, right? You get, it's just a chain mining gang, something gang dropping. I forget what they call it in the game. But you got a bunch of people mining, and somebody comes into the haulage ship, picks up all the ore, ferries it back. And it's like just that bit where the players are clicking together in that novel way, and the game's like just really supporting emergent mechanics. Well, I love that shit. It's like the best design. Basically,
I love that.
Yeah,
it's so fun. That's what it's all about, man. And like having that emergent gameplay, like honestly, I would love for whenever Valheim actually goes live, for them to actually have way more multiplayer support. In my opinion, you know why another good reason New World is fucking awesome as a game is because it has proximity voice chat.
Oh, that's big.
That's so big. Like, I remember, so whenever I was in town, I was like, I turned it on, and I'm like, yo, can anybody hear me? And there was nobody else that had it. except for there was one other guy, and he said, "Yo, is this thing working?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I started talking to him. I find out later that guy worked on the game, and that was a genuine question. He did not know if it was going to work. It was the funniest shit ever.
Either. Yeah. I like I was walking up to people saying stuff, and then they like weren't responding, and then they all started typing me. They were like, "How the fuck did you turn that on?"
Yeah.
But by like the second or third day, people were using it much more. That was a good test. That was a really good test.
Yeah, it was kind of bad because like after people learned that you had proximity voice chat, you just had a bunch of naked characters that are in a prone position, crawling in the prone position in circles like a human centipede, screaming in the mic in every town.
My
this
favorite
is what you get for playing on the streamer server, okay?
My favorite thing was that, and then you would hear some guy with the healing staff just going, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!"
Yeah, it was a great time. Like, I honestly love the game. I cannot wait to play it. Like, some of the images are just amazing. Like, it's actually going to be, I think, I don't know, like, what the longevity of New World is going to be. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, that's why people care about if an MMO is dying or not, and if an MMO is growing or not, because people want to invest their time into something that they don't think is going to just, they don't want to build a castle on sand. They want to play a game that has value, lasting value, that they can play in 5 years or 10 years, and them grinding a bunch of bullshit is still going to matter then. And I think that New World, I don't know if it's going to have that or not. I have no idea. I mean, it depends on how they want to do it. I mean, they had like the whole cash shop bullshit, and we'll see what happens.
What's going on with that?
I genuinely think it was. I actually think it was overblown. My truthful take on it right now. They have been pretty good about testing, and they've also been very honest about transactions, even on like their port. Like, if you look at Lost Ark, like that game is super pay to win, right? And they're not like, "Oh, yeah, that's not pay to," like, it's fine, right? It's part of the game. It's not hidden. So I do think with New World, people overreacted to initial testing that happened, but I'm also a whale. So I do look at things differently sometimes, and I will admit that. I do think that it was potentially overblown, and I think that we'll find out whether or not it was. I think their statement said a lot, but hey, look, I could be wrong. Like, I'm admitting that I could be wrong.
The thing is, like, they showed a lot of this stuff, and like I think that like I'll play the game on release. I'm excited to play the game. I'm gonna do it. And then if they add in enough stuff that makes you not want to play the game after a certain point of time, I'm just gonna stop playing. Like, it's literally just that simple. Like, I don't want to play a game and get into that kind of stuff because I just find it like really like boring and not fun if it has a bunch of like microtransactions and things that diminish the experience. But, you know, what are those things really going to be? We'll have to see. I was kind of, I was a little bit, I felt better that they showed the armor that was available, and the armor that was available was not just, you know, a complete monumental difference better than just the armor that was available in game. And that was definitely reassuring. Absolutely.
Sequisha brought up a great point in chat too. Yeah, he was like they removed the corruption, boring farming stuff that was supposed to be super end game, but it was in for testing. And like that is some of the things that I think we saw. Like, such a good point. They were testing like that. They were testing what we weren't necessarily seeing the final product. And that's why I brought up the idea that this next test, we're going to see much more of what the game actually is. We haven't fully seen that yet. We haven't seen where their focuses really are going to lie. And I still have a lot of belief in the game. And you remember this, Asmon, better than anyone. Before that test happened, I was like New World is going to suck. I was spelling world with an omega lol for an O. Like, I had no faith in the game at all, no interest in the game. I thought it was just something that McConnell talked about. And that was it. I did not care. And after playing the test, I am very much on that hype train, more so than Ashes of Creation. I believe that the game is going to be really good. They impressed me a lot in the test. Yeah.
What impressed me a lot with New World, more so than the test, was how receptive they were to feedback. Yeah. Because that's the one thing that I think, for example, WoW really lacks, is they don't have that ability to change things based off of feedback. And WoW being able to like not make those changes, I think really is what the problem is. Like, the New World devs, like, we talked to them before, we did an interview with them. They have been some of the most receptive. And honestly, like, even they went and they defended themselves and they talked about the cash shop thing. and many companies would just have a radio silence policy on that.
Yep.
And the thing is, like, I am very excited for this game, because the reason why I'm excited for it is that I know that it can potentially change. And I'll be honest, the first time that I saw New World, the first time ever, like the engine, the graphics and everything, I was so fucking hyped. Like, I saw that and I was like, this is what a new MMO is supposed to look like. It
inspired my confidence a lot. If I was a company and I was in charge of PR, after Asmongold just shit on my game for microtransactions, I would say nothing. I would say, hopefully it blows over. This is hypothetical, I would be like, hopefully that guy goes up and plays another game and shits on that. He does it all the time. Let's just avoid it. And they basically went, they were like, you're wrong, pussy. And then they gave a full explanation of what they were planning to do. And that inspired a lot of confidence for me and the team. And also, Asmon and I, when we first played the game, we weren't like positive Andes at all. We were talking a lot of shit. And it was shit that I think the game deserved, even though we liked it. And you know what they did? They still jumped on stream with us and they explained why things were like that. They admitted faults and they gave an idea of what their vision's going to be. That is a good sign from a dev team. And
that's the last thing you'll see from Bliss.
That's
right.
It's so sad, dude. It's so sad.
They haven't talked to me in years.
Why can we not just bring Ian on a stream and have him just talk about the game? Why does it have to be this massive corporate theater production? Why can't you just talk about the game and have a conversation with us like we're players, and not this weird, like that Blizzard acts like they're the fucking government.
Well, they do. They did talk to Preach. They did talk to Preach. I think they
once a year.
Maybe they just don't like us. I don't know. Man.
I think that's
a little suspicion.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a suspicion that's probably the case.
They keep telling me not to come back to the office. I don't get what's going on. I love the guys.
I don't know, man. Like, I'd love to see that happen. Honestly, like, 9.1 is an improvement over Shadowlands. As I said, I think that the Torghast stuff is good, but they've just got so far to go. And, like, I am so exhausted about restarting the beta process for every expansion. So, Shadowlands, at the end of Shadowlands, it's going to happen. If they can actually take what they learned in Shadowlands and take the systems that they developed and make them better in the next expansion, I'm gonna have a lot more confidence for the game, because I'm not gonna quit WoW. Like, there's no way I'm gonna quit WoW. But that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna be frustrated whenever I play it. Or it doesn't also mean that I might play it a little bit less whenever there's other games that I can play instead.
That's going to be it. Like, when when the main good thing is cool new raid, it's like, okay, now I'm going to get, I'm going to do some dungeons. If new mega dungeon comes out, I'm going to do that. Maybe not ideal if the postmaster boss has got a bug that was reported by even someone in our team, Dakor, like, I don't know, way in PTR, so a bit salty about that. But it's like, if I'm just going to get curve, and then it turns out there's no cool new rep to go and do, or like truly new feeling thing, instead of just install Tomcat and handy notes and run around in circles. Like, I'm going to play another game outside of raid. Like, I'm going to acknowledge that they are some of the best encounter designers on the planet, and their raids are fucking excellent, but
true.
That's one game. That's like one small little game. Where's the so I'm actually I've Googled, right? It's 5 days is the beta for New World.
Yep. It's gonna be in 5 days. It's gonna be on the 20th.
I need to get in this.
Hit me up.
Yeah,
and we probably could help you get in. But like, also play on our server and join our guild.
Yeah,
it's gonna be lit.
It is going to be lit. It really is. Now the thing is that you started to allude to that I think is just so different about WoW and used to exist in WoW. In Final Fantasy, guys, I don't know why you're saying lit like that. Like, no cap on a stack. Like, Skrilla is going to be
on God. It's a great word to use.
For real. By the way, we are going to be inviting Aiden Ross on next week for Allcraft. I think it's about time. We're going to talk to Aiden Ross about. I think we could get him to play Final Fantasy, but nonetheless, I digress. I think the thing with Final Fantasy is it's very apparent that they expect you to play the new content and then either go hang out in your estate, in your FC estate, and like just look at cat girls or whatever the heck you're going to do there, or they expect you to go play another game. They even have crossovers with the other games. It feels
what
like
else
they're
does
playing
that?
games.
You know what else does that is Path of Exile. I think even Chris Wilson said before, he's like, after you finish all the content, you finish your character. Yeah. I mean, it's if there's people that want to keep making new characters and do that and play the game to its fullest extent, that's great. They love that. But there's a lot of people that are seasonal players. I'm a seasonal player. Every league, pretty much every league, and if not every league, every other league, I come back and I play Path of Exile and I love it. And sometimes I have to quit my stream over it because I want to play it so much.
Imagine doing that.
And guys, the renown bar lasts up to 80. That's so much to do.
I know, that's a lot of content, man. And I'm going to have to level up a rogue so I can farm out all my transmog daggers. Yeah, thank God for that. There are 3.
Hey, it's a new character to do world quests on.
Yeah, that's
sure
true.
You're hype.
According to Ian, that's what people play the game for. Some people play the game to get farm anima power on 2 characters. Imagine that.
Path of Exile's in the chat. Be good. Yeah,
what up, boys?
By the way,
so let's talk about the Mirror of Kalandra drop on the first day of me streaming the new league.
Let's talk about loot boxes, okay? Because I've been opening up a lot of those. I'm just trying to get the portal.
They'll probably give them to you, right?
Wait, really?
Yeah, probably. I mean, sure, why not?
It won't be as fun. I need to spend the money to get the joy out of it. I'm like, actually, like, please, Path of Exile, do not give me any loot boxes for free. I won't enjoy it as much. I really just won't enjoy it as much. But I think that the thing with Path of Exile is you can come back, you can enjoy it, and then you can go live your life, and you have the sense of self-accomplishment, so you never build up the resentment, like, which is the opposite of WoW right now. I feel like I build up resentment over the game because I feel like I can't stop and I have to go to work.
Yeah, it feels stretched out, and the bits where you feel the stretch are abrasive, so you feel sad. Like,
yeah,
pretty simple.
It sucks, man. It really does. Bellular, did you ever play PoE?
No, a tiny bit ages ago. It's a game that I respect, and people that I know are super into it. So like, I've seen plenty of it from a distance and like the GDC talk, but no, I've just like, man, time's a real bastard. Like,
it sucks, right? Like PoE, it's a lot. You got to know a lot about PoE. But the thing is, it's deceptive. Like, it's deceptive in both ways, because if you follow a build guide, you'll be able to do what you need to do. It'll be all right. It's a fun game, but it depends on if you're into ARPGs. Like, I'm super excited for it. Like, I honestly, like, I've been playing video games all day, every day. And like, usually all I do is I'll like watch YouTube videos of things that I don't even care about. And like, it's just been so nice to have games to play that are fun, man. Like, it really has been. And I also
how many good games there are these days.
Yeah,
like it's fucked. You can't play them all.
I know. I can't imagine it. Yeah, and I do want to say, guys, we're gonna get some questions here. Rich, you want to go ahead and look for some questions for us, and we'll get into that.
If you guys can you can ask some in the old chat, but also if you want to tag us on Twitter, I'll just look for the tags, and I will ask whatever questions I see.
What game are you looking forward to, Bellular, more than anything?
Well, I mean, now that you've told me about New World.
Yeah, the trees, huh?
I'm actually, I'm big thinking about that. You know what? Shadowbringers and Endwalker. I've barely played.
Yeah.
I barely played FF14. I'm not barely. I mean, like a few days, but time's been a bit. There's a whole bunch of things going on here, but it's just nice having that much game to be driven to just fucking plow through. Like, to actually play like it's back in the day. For other things, I mean, it's hard. I've slipped back into playing Shogun 2 Total War. It's one of my favorite games of all time. So,
2004?
No, it's like 2012. 2010, 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, Shogun. Oh, dude, Shogun 2 is so good. Yeah, so I've been like in my little happy corner, kind of siloed away from everything. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly that. Like, I'm mostly thinking about FF and now New World. Do you know what it is, right? So then when you're so busy, like, working in the games industry, it's real fucking hard to get enough time to play games.
It must be weird, right? Yeah, because like now you're actually like making your own games, and like you've got to think about making your own games rather than just playing games. That must kind of suck.
It is really fucked. And even on that, like the amount of games that like I've I've got to play more of Suzerain. I've got to play more of oh, hello, Mr. Brain. The big RPG. I cannot believe I fucked this one up. It's like oh my god, I can't. Which one? The big one. It's the top-down one. It's made by the shit balls.
Like Witcher?
No.
Elden Ring?
No. It's it's like an indie. I've actually lost my marbles.
Lost Ark?
No, screw it. I've managed to lose my marbles, but no, it's like between my like games I really want to play for like that reason because it stuff's similar genre to us, and man, yeah, it's really hard to find time to play games.
I know.
People will know more about why that is in first stage 1 month, and then in 4 months.
When do you think we're gonna get a look at your new game? Yeah.
Okay, so I can say that the initial plan. How to do this? We're not currently we are not self-publishing. Okay. So you can maybe put 1 and 2 together there. All right. So that means that we don't, people to work with, right? So initially the plan was to do stuff in and around Gamescom. So August for trailer, the whole thing. That's been pushed back a few months. Not because of our development schedule, funny enough, but because better shit. Some real... let's just say good time and place to to do proper announcements and stuff.
Okay.
So that people will see a lot more next year, and that's what that's game one. But man, the whole space is wild, and it'll be nice when I can finally talk candidly about everything. Because for an example, we lost an entire year to just funding the studio, like a whole fucking year, because we ended up getting together. It was like, how much was it? Like 60, 80 grand. There was a part of a local funding pot to do a bunch of prototypes, 6 prototypes, take those into 2 vertical slices, take one of those into a more complete thing. And it's we kind of needed to do that to keep the company going for a year while we secured things for the first game we're going to release. But then you lose a year, right? So there's all these weird trials and tribulations, but we're basically finally on the clear. Which might mean there'll be time to play video games soon, which would be really fucking nice. I miss them.
Yeah,
I miss them. Now I hear there's a fucking red tree that I need to go and chop down somewhere.
I feel like the funny thing is, there weren't that many games that I felt like I wanted to play for a while, and now they're all just coming out at the same time. Now it's just every single thing is flowing out at the same time. I'm going to start taking some of these questions though. So one of the questions is, do you feel like, and this is for you two, basically the storytelling in Final Fantasy, does that enhance the content as you play it? Does it enhance dungeons for you? Does it enhance raids for you?
Massively.
Or, I have to pee really quick too while you guys talk about this one.
Dude, massively. It's an RPG.
Yeah.
So humongously. That's what gives you the context, all the stuff that you're doing. And the same happens in WoW when, they actually set up their stories right. And, we're not just I don't know. I'm not really a big Marvel guy, but it's, as if they were just at the end of the Infinity War movie, oh, by the way, there's these things called Infinity Stones and he's got them all now. These are all fucked.
Oh man. I'm going to be honest.
They just snapped to that and they didn't bother to
it would suck.
Yeah,
well, that's literally what they did. That's literally what they did with the Justice League. And the mother boxes, what the fuck is...
yeah.
It's garbage. And I've watched pretty much every single Marvel video or every Marvel movie. And I will say it, right? At the risk of sounding like a huge normie, I think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is fucking incredible. I think Infinity War is one of the best movies ever made. And I love it. I think it's so good. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. And honestly, the reason is because exactly what you're saying. They built it up over so many years, right? People were expecting Thanos for 4 or 5 years. In my opinion, I don't even think Galactus is going to be as good. There's no way.
Yeah, you can't just say, hey, there's this weird kinky looking dude with his nips out called the Jailer. And then
Yeah,
we spend no
surprise.
time with him. And then suddenly, oh no, he has the sigils, bros. What are we going to do? The
that just
sigils.
You know the
And
art of
we
the
don't know
sigils.
what these sigils mean. We don't know.
No.
I mean, okay, we know where he's going. He's going to the sepulcher of the first ones, but like that's lore nerd shit. That's not like the core story that they told. Yeah, so lore is great because lore is the backdrop to the virtual world we're all having fun in. But story's the bit you feel in your bones. It's like, you know, Lord of the Rings. Imagine if the whole of Lord of the Rings was written in the same way as the appendixes were. It's like, look, I love Lord of the Rings. I love the appendixes. They're really interesting because I want to know what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
But you don't tell the story with the friggin' appendixes. So it's, yeah, I mean.
So, like, a great example of this is the fact that, like, how many years, was it like 21 or something years passed between whenever Gandalf left the ring with Frodo and then whenever he came back that much time later after he went to Minas Tirith to, like, research the ring and everything? And if you're just watching the movie, you don't even know that happened. It doesn't even matter to you. It's the same as whenever he got reborn as Gandalf the White. Nobody has any idea any of that stuff happened. And if you find out more about it, it makes it feel better. But at the base level, it still feels good. And I think that's the problem with WoW, is that a lot of the WoW lore at the base level doesn't feel good. But if you know everything about it, it feels a little bit better. And that's what's really disappointing about it.
And it's whole zooming out thing. Like, I think it was Ian's interview with me when he said, you know, zooming out on the cosmology chart.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the time, it was like, okay, cool. Where could this lore go? There's a lot of ways they could take it. And they could actually take it in a very, very interesting whatever direction. But the more you zoom out, the further away the Defias Brotherhood and the Scarlets and, you know, Uther's Little Temple and Ironforge and all those things that, you know, we actually have the emotional connection to. The further away those things are from us and the smaller they appear. And that lessens our connection. You know, it's like a lot of people would say that Shadowlands narratively jumped the shark in that we've gone to the afterlife. I mean, if you actually think about that from the perspective of like world building in a world, I mean, a cat has been let out of the bag, right?
That's a good point.
And it's just that weird thing of like, how do you go back to that Warcraft that people like know and like? That thing we're rooted in our hearts. And I think that's the challenge they face. And if they keep on going through this Cosmos thing in a way that feels alienating to the core of the setting, they're going to have a big issue. Like, they could do a cosmic expansion in a way where, you know, it's the light invading Azeroth. And they've set that up with Yrel. And a bunch of people are going to be very weak at the knees if, you know, Mummy's coming through the portal with a big hammer and she's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Right? So that could be great. They could do Cosmos in its light and cosmic forces and all that stuff, but it also can be Azeroth with Azerothian characters and places we know and characters that would be great. But if they were to explore the same thing by doing another something lands and just kind of pulling a thing out of the, I mean, it's not out of the bag for them because they've, you know, had all their nerdy meetings to work it all out. And that's all. Yeah, like, it's like, imagine if Zoval actually just arrived in Azeroth and, you know, they revamped Northrend. And, you know, that was the Shadowlands expansion. Like, I just wonder how people would have reacted to that.
Here's my dream, man, is that we find out at the end of Shadowlands that we actually were dead. N'Zoth killed all of us.
Oh, yeah.
And then we come back and the world is just completely fucking different. That would be so cool.
You've got Mass Effect 3 indoctrination theory levels of copium going on. I really hope it's that. That would be cool.
I know.
I'd like that. Here's cool. This could tickle your pickle, right? Okay. Let's just say, you know, Zoval gets the sepulcher of the first ones, right? He gets all of his, strange knowledge. And then he's got to come get Azeroth. So he zoops down through Icecrown, and then maybe our patch 9.2 is, you know, set in Icecrown, set in Northrend.
Yeah.
Do a whole big thing there. That, I think, is the right way to take the Shadowlands expansion.
It's kind of bring it back to Azeroth.
Yeah. Oh, totally. The amount of people I have talked to, like, seriously, it is like, I'm doing these lore videos. I read the comments. I try to get, you know, a temperature gauge of the community. People don't like this cosmic stuff as much as the WoW devs do, I think. And it's like, you know, me and Pyromancer and whatever, we can just, you know, nerd out over the lore or something. That doesn't translate into the ideal setting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The problem is too is every time they have a really good narrative beat that they could use, they destroy, like they don't use it well. Like the build up at the end of the expansion, even for BFA, where it's like, okay, we can have this really great old god moment now. And then they don't create like a really in-depth zone. We don't really get to experience all the stuff that they've been building up to for years.
Rings.
Dude, they could have made an entire expansion about just what that one patch would have been, and it would have been so thematically cool. And this next expansion could have been Into the Void. It's like, oh wow, you killed the old gods, now kill their makers. And something like that would have this really clean narrative progression. And instead, they go, hey, let's just all put it in one shitty patch. Let's make everybody hate it, and then let's kill everybody. It's like, all right, cool story.
So bad, man. Like, and it's even a thing of player investment. Like, I was invested in that story. I've been tracking all this old god shit for ages. I'm like, oh fuck, the void petal that's in the Emerald Nightmare, and we did that in the Emerald Nightmare raid, and oh shit, that was even kind of connected to the end of Warlords of Draenor. Oh my god. Yeah. And then we just kind of give him a wee zap.
It's like that. Where's this fucking guy? Oh my god!
Like,
he came out, did he really, man? Did he really take over Oldham? Oh my god! Now I'm not going to be able to do my camel dailies. Shit! It's like, oh wow, this is so dangerous. I can't do my camel dailies. What a joke!
It felt such a budget patch.
Yeah, like what is this, dude? Like I was so upset about that. I was expecting like the Black Empire to be like a whole. I expected to be like Argus, honestly. And even like,
you know what?
Yeah, go ahead.
It feels like they're trying to race forward into this new era of the lore.
Yeah,
they're really just trying to zoom, and it's like maybe in the older times, you know, we probably could have got 2, maybe 3 expansions out of the material BFA covered, because you could do a faction war.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Like, have you read the mission table, like flavor text from BFA?
No, I have the add-on.
Okay, sweet. So here's the good news. I guess you haven't experienced the Battle of Azeroth yet, because the actual battle that happens in the places that we know in Azeroth is in the text of the mission table. So it's like that could have. I mean,
win.
Like, do you remember? Right, it's Cataclysm.
Yeah,
it's fucking Cata, and you're leveling a new tune. You're in the Barrens, and you're just all those little bits where like the war, like Garrosh and all that stuff's happening, and you were just pumped to kill some horde. You're pumped to kill some alliance because we're not weird Goku characters at that stage. We're just like, oh shit, the war effort, we got to go here. And it felt like this good, motivated story that really worked in the game. Yeah. It's like, that could have been a whole expansion in itself. All this shit of Ashara, like, I don't think most people are just like, oh yeah, Ashara, she's that, like, mean elf. She is so, like, basically her power level is, like, super off the charts. She's, like, a super, super big, powerful character. She almost certainly could have been a whole expansion. N'Zoth Black Empire, I mean, obviously that could have been an expansion, right? But it's like they just blasted through that material.
I feel like the last tier should have been Crucible. Like the point, the reveal, right? Where like the battle for Azeroth isn't against the factions. It's, the factions, the battle for Azeroth against the old gods.
You know, the funny thing too,
I thought it was really cool.
They fall back on the same narrative thing over and over again, where it's like, okay, the really cool reveal is going to be at the end of the expansion, but at the beginning, we're just going to have another Horde versus Alliance fight. It's going to be, and they make the beginning of the story always the most redundant thing that we've experienced as World of Warcraft players. People check out of the story, and then by the time they get to the end, they're rushing, and they rush through all the good parts of the story, and we never get a good story. And it just feels like we're getting the same thing over and over again.
That's a big thing. That's a really big thing. Because, it's like... So if we think about what Zaval's doing right now...
Yeah.
We experienced Covenant world building and localized problem solving. And like that is all cool and good if you want to get a flavor of those zones. And I really like the bits of Cult of Ras that did that. But very little time went into telling the main actual story of Shadowlands.
Well, which
is not dealing with Gorm and collecting Gris and Anima Cones. It's Sylvanas, it's Zoval, it's, the sigils and all that stuff.
And they knew about it.
Should have been the level up experience.
It's like we just found out about that shit whenever he stole one. Like, what do you mean? Like, why didn't we spent all day killing baby Gorm? Why didn't we spend all day building a better jail to put the sigil in? if they knew that he was going to be coming for it, which they knew that shit was going to happen. Like, it's just crazy. Like,
very weird, dude.
It doesn't make any sense. And I think that's one of the problems, like, with the lore, is that, like, the shit just doesn't make sense. And at a certain point, you start, like, wonder, like, the willing suspension of disbelief kind of gets, like, it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And then at a certain point, it's like, okay, what the fuck's going on?
I will say, every now and then, they do have, like, a few moments where I was like, okay, this was a well-done story.
Ardenwield's great.
Ardenwield had some good moments, and then also what's his face with Rastakhan and Bwansamdi.
Oh, I love him.
That was actually a good character, right? And a new character. One of the biggest problems I think with WoW is they're scared to actually kill most of their characters because they don't make new ones. But Bwansamdi was an interesting character, and I was actually excited. I didn't make it this far in the expansion because I wasn't enjoying it, but I was excited to learn about Muzala. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, that's it.
I was excited to learn about him. I ended up not doing it. Eventually, I'll go back and maybe I'll watch a video from
basically. So Bonswambi is like the like cashier associate of death, and Muzala is like the middle manager of death. And the jailer is death. He's like the CEO. He's like the main manager at the Walmart of death. That's effectively what it was.
So basically, right now, the jailer's getting like $100 million bonus, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you saw that armor? That shit ain't cheap.
Do you think that I don't know, maybe Bwansamdi might get laid off or something?
No. Muzala got laid off. He was getting paid too much money, and jailer wanted to save some money. And since he was more of a senior member and he had accrued a lot of, just over the time raises and things like that, he looked at the quarterly earnings report and he decided that Bonswambi might as well take his place. And so Muzala got the boot.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Things are going good. Time to lay some folks off.
It is what it is.
Yep.
Absolutely.
The business.
Anyway, you want to do one more question, Rich?
I think this is a good one. It says, are you guys worried about the remaster of Diablo 2 with Blizzard's recent track record?
No.
Nope, not at all. It's not even...
They're going to do it just fine.
It's not even... Okay, it's technically made by Blizzard, but it's not really made by Blizzard. Yeah. It's made by Vicarious Visions, who... they did the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remaster.
Now it's godly.
They have basically been pumping out great polished shit for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. They've been merged into Blizzard. They're now helping. They're helping a bit on D4, which I think is good news. So yeah, like their recent track record is absolutely banging. It's going to be great.
Cool. Yeah, that was quick. So
don't worry.
This question literally is just golden saucer ?
Oh yeah, I need to log on and do that. I won 10,000 of the points today on Golden Saucer because I won the miniature scratch off ticket thing.
Wait,
it's pretty awesome.
You won Cacpot?
I won the mini Cacpot.
Wow, yo, that's big. Congrats, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you. It was good.
Wow, good day. Good. What do you think of a place like Golden Saucer? Because I think there are obvious parallels between
that
Golden
Darkmoon
Saucer
Fair,
and
right?
Darkmoon Fair, yeah.
I fucking love both of them. I think they're awesome. I love content like that. It makes the game fun.
I feel like Golden Saucer, the fact that it's always up and like how it's designed has some advantages over Darkmoon Fair, and Darkmoon Fair, if it was more like Golden Saucer, would be a really good place to hang out.
Cozy hangout, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think they're both good in their own way, and I think Darkmoon Fair is really cool. I've always loved it. I remember whenever they brought it out, and I think it was 5.3 or 5.4, somewhere around there. Or no, sorry, 4.3. I think it was 4.3, 4.2. And it was great. I loved it. It was so much fun. I remember like seeing everybody doing the cannon, like flying one after another with each other. Dude, that was so cool to see. I loved it so much.
Yeah, just nobody hangs out there, right? Like, I feel like that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, so I logged in yesterday. I was like, okay, I'm going to take a day off from Final Fantasy. I'm going to take 1 day off from Final Fantasy. So I logged on to Final Fantasy, and I go over to the old Golden Saucer, and I see like 3 people there that I know. And Gremlo was there. I was like, yo, what's up, Gremlo? And, did a couple events. I played some games. I played some Triple Triad, and I had a lot of fun. And I would never have done that in the Dark Moon Fair, and I don't think that the Dark Moon Fair is bad, right? But I feel like there are things about how Golden Saucer's set up that create that shared space where people will just go there to hang out.
I agree with that. I think that Final Fantasy in general does a great job with that, having those shared spaces. And also, I think that it appeals to the people that want to make those shared spaces, too. It appeals to the Moon Guardians. Appeals, excuse me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I need to get more time in that game.
This has been an incredible episode. It's been, we made up for lost time by having this be like a 3-hour episode.
Holy shit.
Thanks a lot for sticking with us for this long. I really appreciate it. It's been, guys, I think, how long have we been trying to get you on the show?
4 years.
4 years. About 4 years. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, the DMs just didn't really line up. I mean, it is what it is.
Lazy cunt.
Yeah. Trust me, so am I. It's completely okay. And listen, man, thanks a lot for coming on and doing this with us, man. Thank you so much. And guys,
that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, I know y'all probably know Bellular and everything, but if you don't, make sure to follow him on Twitter, on YouTube. Do you stream on Twitch? You just pretty much do you do all your stuff on YouTube now, don't you?
Yeah, I know. We stream on YouTube.
How is it?
I don't know. Like, technically, I violated my Twitch partner agreement because I from back in the day, right, when we were both YouTubers in Warlords of Draenor, I was Twitch streaming, got partnered, but if you stream somewhere else, you violate your partnership. So, did I just burn that bridge? I don't know. I don't know.
Be cool. Be cool.
Yeah. Delete the VOD, man. Delete the VOD. I won't tell him. It's okay.
Shit.
But yeah, Bellular has not only got his WoW channel, he's also got he's got 2 other channels. He's got his Clips channel, and that kind of goes with like kind of just like the moment. It's basically like my Asmongold TV channel, talking about different stuff, like little points from his podcast, where he does it with the other guy.
Yeah, doing the industry stuff, which, you know what? Fun to do, but man, it's been a dry year for news, so spice will happen soon, hopefully. But honestly, it's fun.
We'll see what happens.
Shoot the shit and stuff.
Anyway, man, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really do appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure. That was good fun.
And anyway, guys, make sure to follow Bellular everywhere. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be transitioning over to the after show. And before we do that, my dad happened to come on over a little bit ago, and he brought over something this is something, it's a long lost relic. And all the way from back in the day, my dad took me out fishing, and he actually first time fishing.
First time to the coast.
And he brought out, and apparently he wrote an article and he sent it in to a fishing magazine, and they published the article with my picture of the fish that I caught. Like, my dad used to take me down, and I caught 3?
Yeah, it's 3 reds, so you kept the only keepers.
I caught more than you, right?
Yeah, well, shit, we had to throw all mine back. Mine were like 2 inches under, and yours were 2 inches over.
About
and
that.
And then you lost that one big bag.
Yeah.
You took off, But you didn't even know you were getting a fucking bite.
Yeah, I had no idea. I'd never done fishing before. Like,
no, you're holding a pole like this, and I'm still I don't even have my bait on,
Yeah.
And you're holding it, and I just throw yours out there, and then I go over to mess with mine. And I turn around, and you're going, I guess. And I said, "Are you getting a bite?" And yeah. And like he was 8 years old, So I lifted up the pole, and things, I said, "Holy shit, get that thing up to the boat." And it swam by the boat. Whammo, right in the boat.
Yeah.
But to make sure he got that first big one.
Honestly, I did. I got a number of them. And I kind of like, why I lost interest? Like, I realized you could fish with a grenade.
Oh, well,
that's
shit.
why. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I know. You know all about that. Yeah, and so, like, that's the thing. That's why I was like, man, like, what are we doing using this fishing pole thing? Like, let's get a grenade, throw one in there, get some fish. But yeah, back in the day, my dad used to take me out to fishing. That's a young Asmongold right there. Look at that.
8 years old.
8 years old. Yeah. He brought that over from his house. But anyway, just a little quick personal anecdote, little thing that happened there. And guys, thank you all so much for watching today. We had an incredible, amazing stream. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys had a lot of fun. On Saturday, what's going to happen is I'm going to come back, and that boss that beat the fuck out of me for an hour? Well, we're going to turn that around. We're going to beat them. And that's what's going to happen 100%. So again, shout out to Bellular. Thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, pleasure. Dude, again, it was fun.
I'm glad that you had fun, man. I'm glad you had fun. Absolutely. And we're going to be moving over to Rich's stream. We're going to talk about a bunch of other stuff, kind of do the after show, take some questions from you guys, some call-ins, etc. And that's the plan. So again, guys, we'll see you over there. But until then, thanks a lot for watching. And until next time, peace.